Good afternoon, everybody. Giro d'Italia 2015, the 98th edition of the race, and you're looking at the finish line. Genoa today, all the way down the Ligurian coast, leaving Albenga very close to where we were in San Remo for the opening stage just 24 hours ago. Beautiful weather for May. We haven't had it in the last few years at the start of the Giro d'Italia, but 25 degrees Celsius, not too much wind about, just 3 kilometres per hour coming off the sea. No crosswinds really to talk of as of yet, unless things decide to change during the afternoon. 177 kilometres in the end, 4 extra kilometres added on to the route today, leaving out of an early climb of Albenga, the Testico coming after the Capomele, which is of Milan-San Remo fame. Historic pro cycling section of racing up the Testico. Plays a part in that early season Trofeo La Gueglia. We get to the final circuit after 2 intermediate sprints and a 4th category climb, enough just to give the first mountains jersey out, and 2 laps of 9.5 kilometres for an expected sprint finish into Genoa. Stage 2, 177 kilometres from Albenga to Genoa, staying all the way in Liguria. And there's that 4th category climb, the Prato Zanino. Started just after lunchtime. Pink jersey and white jersey on show today. No maglia rossa for the points, no maglia azzurra for the mountains on stage 2. They'll both be given out at the end of the day. Michael Matthews, the best young rider, the race leader, of course, Simon Gerrans. At 12:54 to be precise, they rolled out of Albenga, up into the hills before coming right back down to the coast. And it would be an interesting one today. I think Orica Green Edge very, very interested in controlling the race, letting an early break go, and just settling into the Giro d'Italia. There's Stefano Allocchio, waves his flag as the director, and it was time for those pro-continental teams to try and get in the break and show their sponsors' logos off. No surprises, Androni Giocattoli tried to get out there. Nippo Vini Fantini getting a rider in. Lotto and El Jumbo have had an awful start to the season at World Tour level, in with a rider as well. CCC Sprandi joining in their orange jersey, and also up there, Southeast team in their white jerseys. The peloton very, very happy to sit up and let that go. And they had as many as 9 minutes, with Simon Gerrans confident in his team's ability to bring it all back for the sprint. It's a nice leisurely ride out from the seaside up the hill. In the meantime, for the breakaway, it was all about trying to establish their advantage up the front. Breakaway riders: Frapporti, Ovsian, Berlato, Zuppa and Lindemann. All trying to stay out for as long as they could, but they'd have a very, very difficult task to avoid a sprint today. An hour and 45 minutes into the stage, and as you can see, Piazza Ferrari in Genoa has been dyed pink. And that's because Simon Gerrans is the leader of the Giro d'Italia. Michael Matthews, Michael Hepburn, Peter Veining and Seinel Clark all making up the top 5. Tinkoff Saxo with a second team on the road in the team time trial yesterday. Manuele Boaro, Rohan Kreuziger, Mick Rogers and Alberto Contador 7 seconds back, making up the early top 10 in the overall Giro d'Italia standings. So stage 2, a beautiful, beautiful day on the road, 177 kilometres and those 2 finished circuits around the city of Genoa. Early look at the young riders overall standing. Well, Michael Matthews the top of that, and he'd expect to be at the top today, perhaps even in pink as well if he can do something in terms of a placing in the top 3 for points as well. This is seen at the finish line. Alongside me in the commentary box, Matt Stevens joins me for the next 8 days while Sean Kelly's got his feet up recovering from some keyhole surgery. Great to have you along, Matt, and what can we look forward to in this first week?
I think we can look forward to a very unpredictable race. I think the beauty of the Giro, apart from the wonderful countryside that it passes through, is the fact that the Giro is never formulaic. The only formula is its unpredictability, and that's what makes it such an eventful and unpredictable race. So I'm just looking forward to some varied racing, and we're straight into the hills in only a couple of days as well.
Mounted stage on stage 5. We'll be back with this stage 2 in just a couple of minutes' time. A very warm welcome to Genoa for stage 2 of this Giro d'Italia. You're watching the home of cycling. As ever throughout this Giro d'Italia, we'd love to hear from you, predictions, comments. conversation topics as well. Questions from Matt Stevens alongside me. It's #HomeOfCycling if you wish to get involved and send us all your views. Well, we wait for the images on the course. A quick chat about yesterday, Matt. It was an interesting one with the team time trial, the 9th time that we'd seen the pink jersey handed out at the end of a team time trial. The 23rd team time trial out there as well. And of course it was won by Orica Green Edge. Team time trial yesterday, won by Orica Green Edge. Matt Stevens alongside me, and of course send all your views and questions for him onto the #HomeOfCycling, please. We're waiting for pictures from out on the course, so a quick look at yesterday. So yesterday it was the team time trial on a cycle path. Orica Green Edge winning, riding strongly. Out there in the break at the minute, we've got riders who are riding extremely strongly for CCC. This is recorded coverage while we wait for the live footage. Just to tell you who's in the break, by the way, we have these pictures. There's Marco Fraporti in the white, blue and red of Androni. Alongside him in the yellow and black, you have the rider from the Netherlands, Bert-Jan Lindeman, also in a big breakaway in the Tour de Romandie a week ago. The first Albanian to start the Giro, Elget Zupa of Southeast. He's in the white jersey. Łukasz Owsian in the fully orange jersey for CCC, the Polish team. He's also there as well. And in the orange and blue, as we see the front of the race heading down the Ligurian coast, you can see we have Signor Berlato as well. Giacomo Berlato riding for Nippo Vini Fantini. He was the man on the left-hand side. And we can see the peloton and the beautiful Mediterranean Sea. Live coverage on stage 2, thankfully, from the Giro d'Italia. There is the peloton, nice and stretched out at the minute. We've seen the gap going up all the way to around 9 minutes so far today. A reminder of who's in the breakaway: Fraporti, Ovsian, Berlato, Lindeman and Zupa. Androni, CCC, Southeast, Nippo Vini Fantini. 4 of the 5 pro-continental teams involved. Only Bardiani of the pro-continental teams missed the break, with Bert-Jan Lindeman from the World Tour and Team Lotto NL Jumbo all up there as well. There are 96.4 Ks to go, and we're on our way to Genoa today. Taking us a while to get going, but we're here, we're ready, and we have live images. Skyriding on the wheels of CCC with Tinkoff Saxo with 96 kilometres to go. Riding at the front though, hoping for a sprint today, both Orica Green Edge and Lampre Merida. Orica Green Edge, of course, they have the pink jersey, they have the lead. Maglia Rosa group at 9 minutes and 8 seconds from a 5-man breakaway at the minute, but a long, long way to go. A lot of this is flat road. Enough teams today will want it to be a sprint, I think, Matt Stevens, but we've seen the final circuit, 9.5 kilometres. On paper, we say it is a sprint to the line between the big boys. However, there are plenty of obstacles, and it's going to be an interesting watch.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting finish. We've got two circuits, as you say, of 9.5 kilometres, but it isn't pan flat. The last, coming with the kilometres to go flag, they go through the flag, swing left, and the road opens out. We've got about a 900-metre stretch, but significantly, the last 600 metres, there's a 2% gradient. You might have noticed it on earlier pictures as we saw the finish there. But that may suit some more of the punchier rides. I think it would definitely suit Michael Matthews, although he can sprint really well on the flat anyway. But perhaps we'll see the likes of Philippe Gilbert come into the mix as well, and maybe even Tom Bonen. You know, we saw him, he's been riding so well recently for Mark Cavendish. Just look at the part of the lead-out train that he formed for Cav in the Tour of Turkey. You can't rule out Tom Bonen. This is his first Giro, incredibly. It'd be nice to see him up in the mix, but no, there's lots of good sprinters teams here. We've got Andre Greipel as well in the mix in the German champions jersey. So, and obviously the Italian teams are going to want to show, because this first week, it certainly isn't, as we touched on before, it's not flat. There are only really, throughout the whole Giro, when you look at the profile, probably 6, maybe 7 for the pure sprinters. The rest suit the punchers, and then of course we have 6 mountaintop finishes. So that's why we're seeing the bunch, riding up. We've got just under 42 kilometres an hour here. Just look at the formation of the bunch. We've got one rider from Orica setting the tempo at the front. Of course, they're going to do that in the early stages just to keep the tempo high. They're obliged to do that because they have La Maglia Rosa, of course. But no, I think that is a relatively significant lead. But I think with the 50 kilometres to go, some interesting sights to the side of the road there. We'll see the sprinters team come into the mix, and we'll see Lampre Merida. They've got a good, really solid roster of sprinters as well come into the mix. Because as I say, few opportunities for the sprint teams in this race.
You mentioned the Maglia Rosa, the pink jersey, the leader's jersey here at the Giro d'Italia. Some of you watching for the first time, I'm sure. Why is it a pink jersey? Well, it's the same colour, the pages of the newspaper that used to run the race with that name. It now runs the race under a different name, RCS Sport, which owns the paper and the race. As we're coming through Finale Ligure, another of the towns along the road, we're going right along the course and along the banks of the sea today, the Mediterranean Sea. Beautiful beaches. You've seen the contrast of colours from the blue to the green of the hills. And with the sunshine, everything looks better, doesn't it? As does that pink jersey, held today by Simon Gerrans, who'll be 35 next week. Started his career with AG La Mondiale, the French team, 10 years ago, in fact. 10 years a professional for him. 1 year in his career he hasn't won. And that was his first year at Sky in 2010. It wasn't a particularly happy time for him, but he then moved to the Australian team when it started. He went to Orica Green Edge. He's had some fantastic wins in the last few years. Last year was probably his best year. He won Liège-Bastogne-Liège. He had 5 wins. So statistically, it was his best year. This year, he's had a bit of a nightmare. He had collarbone break, an elbow break. He fell in Liège-Bastogne-Liège not once, but twice, as you reminded me, in the ad break before as well. He's here. He's had a beautiful reward yesterday. They said that it was the team's plan to put him across the line in the pink jersey. They were obviously confident. They came to win their stage. They did win the stage. First question for you, Matt, how long can they hold on to the jersey?
Well, you've got to look back to last. Well, firstly, I'm in complete agreement. Poor old Simon Gerrans, what a year he's had. So much. As a rider, he has matured like a fine wine. As he's reached his early and mid-30s, he's just got better and better. He's won, a couple of monuments now. He can win from specifically good from a small group. He can climb well. So. But they've also got Michael Matthews, but arguably, Simon Gerrans, given the terrain we've got for the first week, perhaps up to the finish in Abbertone, I think that might be a step too far. And I think Matt White has said it'd be great if they can hold the jersey all the way to Abbertone, which I think is realistic for them. But I think they could get another stage win along the way. Michael Matthews could be in the mix today. I don't think we'll see necessarily Gerrans riding today at the finish, but perhaps he'll be working in the service of his young teammate, as we see on the screen.
Some of the favourites for today: Michael Matthews, 24 wins, a stage win at the Giro that led to 6 days in that pink jersey last year. Giacomo ʻdʒiːro has never won at the Giro, but he's got 10 victories in his career. Elia Viviani is a collection of 2nd and 3rd places at the Giro down the years. He's been a pro with Liquigas and then Cannondale since 2010. He's moved to Sky over the winter. He already has a win for them, which was obtained at the Dubai Tour at the start of the year. Interesting to see whether we think that Viviani is going to get a chance to ride for himself today towards the end, or is it all about Richie Porte, who, when we go through the runners and riders and the big 4 aces, as we'll do a little later on in the stage today, and check in where the general classification contenders went, it wasn't a great day for Richie Porte. Will Viviani get the freedom to ride today?
I don't think we'll see the team necessarily galvanised around him. I think upon reflection, when you look at the fact they conceded, 20 seconds to Tinkoff Saxo, 27 seconds to Orica Green Edge, over 17 kilometres, to me, that's relatively significant, and I don't think I'll be the only person to say that Sky will look upon the Team Time Trial riders a little bit of a disappointment. But there you go. I think that they will be all about looking after Richie Porte. I saw Richie Porte a couple of days ago, a couple of days before the start. He looks so lean. And look at the season he's had so far. He's such a consistent upward trajectory. I know from Team Sky, he's lighter than ever. He's putting out the best numbers he's ever put out.
Well, he's got to that stage, hasn't he, that Grand Tour's stage winners and overall winners have to get to nowadays if they want to win. They have to look ill, don't they? They lose that much weight that they don't look their best, but you know that they're on form when they've got that look in their cheeks, those hollow holes in the cheeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sky are actually, he's on such good form, they're nervous. They are nervous because you don't want to lose that. I mean, they've cultivated, they've nurtured him. He's had a completely different winter. He's changed his lifestyle. He's been open in the press about saying he didn't perhaps treat cycling too seriously. And it was even quoted, I think somebody within Team Sky, that you don't look like a cyclist. So he changed, and look at the results. So they're going to be very protective of him. I think we see Viviani freestyling at the finish today.
He said he's off the beer now. He stopped drinking.
And the ice cream.
And the ice cream. He's found love as well. He's engaged to be married now. Very, very happy place at the minute, Richie Porte. When we come back, we'll talk about exactly how all those general classification contenders did on day one. 88 kilometres remain on stage 2 of this 2015 Giro d'Italia. 8 minutes and 11 for a breakaway of 5 riders. Marco Frapporti, Giacomo Bellato, Bert-Jan Lindemann, Elget Zupa and Łukasz Ovsian all up the road. Peloton, well, they're having a nice little chat and an introduction to themselves for the start of this Giro. Just a couple of riders at the front. Orica Greenedge, who want to keep the pink jersey, and of course riding for the honour of the leader's jersey. And Lampre Merida, who want to try and get the win for Sacha Modolo today. Whilst everything's nice and quiet, let's turn our attention back 24 hours. It was a start on a cycle path, the first ever team time trial on a cycle path in a Grand Tour in the Giro d'Italia. Plenty of fans, and something that's been missing over the past few editions of this race, sunshine as well. It was lovely to see. Brilliant atmosphere down between San Lorenzo al Mare, was making its Giro debut, and San Remo, where we know from the spring and the Milan-San Remo Classic, loads of those scenes with people on the side of the road, straight off the beach, some of the shirts still off and just waving at people going by. It's 25 degrees, by the way, today. One of the first days of summer, really. We've managed to wave goodbye for spring for now, and I'm sure we'll be saying hello to winter again when we get to the mountains later on in the race, but this is the breakaway. Yesterday, though, it was a stage 1 by Orica Greenedge. Lots of joy for Simon Gerrans, who had his family in tow. They live down the road in Monaco, so it was nice to see that for him. Going behind, though, how did the 4 aces get on? Our 4 favourites, that's the real question. 1 stage down, 20 to go. We had Fabio Aru, Astana, Italian rider, still a young rider, and perhaps the biggest surprise, Matt Stevens, because they could and perhaps should have been the weakest of the 4 when you look at the respective teams with Ethics Quickstep, Richie Porte and Sky, Alberto Contador and Tinkoff Saxo. You said out the 4 teams, Astana, it's a team full of climbers really, would have been the weakest. In the end, Aru got the second best result, and he enjoyed his day. It was selfies and autographs galore. He went on Italian TV afterwards, talking up his own chances as well. And then he would have had 2 or 3 hours before he got to his massage, had he been straight back to the bus and the hotel afterwards as well. What did you make of Fabio Aru's start?
It was, I mean, they were sat, weren't they, at the finish line, you know, eagerly, you know, watching the screen, watching the teams come by, and Astana led for a considerable period of time, you know, and it was solid. I mean, I think that's what's, you know, team time trialing is a sum of, you know, it's an event where it's a sum of its parts. I mean, it's not about having 2 particularly good riders who can tear the team apart. It's about the team effort, riding smoothly, riding an even pace, and using your strength as a collaboration, basically. But amazing when you look at the Astana team. It's you know, Aru, Turlongo, Diego Rosa, Cataldo, Zietz, Lewis and Sanchez, Telekanga, and Mikel Landa, who did, I think if you were to look at one of the riders who was in difficulty, Landa was in a little bit of difficulty at the back, but amazingly they pulled out a quite remarkable time.
All 9 men finishing together as well. It's so rare in team time trialing, in just 13 seconds back. Yeah,
I mean, it was a. I rode the team time trial course. It was remarkably flat, very, very narrow, so we saw some very, very fast times with a really technical section in the middle. It's quite nervy, quite claustrophobic. Generally, when you're riding a team time trial, they're on quite wide open roads, so you can look at riding in an echelon formation, but we saw teams more in a team time trial, a very long team time trial formation rather than echeloning out. It was quite sheltered, and they went through 4 tunnels. So I was actually surprised there were no accidents, no crashes, apart from teams shedding riders through the sheer effort. There was no crashes, fortunately. Everybody finished upright, which was good, but a very unusual team time trial. But I think Aru's going to be very, very happy with that. Disappointed, of course, not to be in pink, but when he reflects upon the time that he's gained upon Rigoberto Urán and Richie Porte, he has to be pleased. But then Alberto Contador, you know, what a ride by Tinkoff Saxo yesterday.
Fabio Aru having a great start. Rigoberto Urán, perhaps one of those, alongside Richie Porte, who might be a little disappointed. They had a team with strength on the flat and the time trial, not many climbers. Should they have taken more of an advantage yesterday? Ethics Quick-Step and Rigoberto Urán, the Colombian time trial champion, of course.
Again, I think they're going to be. They had Tom Bonen across the line first, and he was desperate. You saw his face desperately looking up at the scoreboard, you know, tinged with disappointment. He knew they hadn't quite made it. You know, what a return that would have been for Tom Bonen, an absolute legend of the sport. But a really troubled start to the year, missed out on the classics. That's why we see him here participating in his first Giro. But when you look at the team before the start, of course, Ethics Quick-Step, you know, a couple of times team time trial champions of the world. At the moment, that's held by BMC, who did a pretty solid ride. But I think they were looking to get Tom Bonen in the pink jersey and perhaps get a little bit of daylight for Rigoberto Urán, who I think will be eyeing the time trial in a week or so's time, because that time trial will definitely suit the attributes of Urán, who absolutely detonated the field in last year's Giro time trial when I think he took a minute 10 from second place. But again, it's going to be all about his performance in the mountains. But again, relative disappointment. But I think the biggest disappointment for the teams, the GC riders, will be Richie Porte conceding 20 seconds to Alberto Contador.
9th for Sky then, and given their high standards, Stefano Garzelli yesterday on Italian television, I was watching some of that last night, said that was a huge disappointment. Lost 20 seconds to Alberto Contador, as you say. Did Richie Porte start slightly on the wrong foot yesterday?
It's difficult to say because of the claustrophobic nature. Although it was a gorgeous course, I mean, went through some stunning scenery and made for quite a spectacle. Perhaps there was an element of nerves, and I think, you know, when you look at the mid section of the course, very technical, some really tight corners, and then the general narrowness, plus the fact they were riding in semi-darkness, maybe Sky were just looking at not taking risks. Didn't want to take any risks, wanted to make sure they finished upright and still within touching distance. So I don't know if that's the right answer. It's just a suggestion. But normally, you know, Sky would either be, you'd think Sky in a team time trial, because they won the team time trial, of course, in the Tour de Romandie.
And they won it here 2 years ago in the second stage when Salvatore Puccio took the pink jersey. Brad Wiggins in the team then, a bit more strength, and perhaps in Sky's defence you'd have to say that only Richie Porte and Vasil Kirienko were really specialists in the time trial yesterday. Yeah,
and I think to be fair to Mikel Nieve, you know, he looked like he was struggling a little bit at the back. Obviously the diminutive Spanish climber, he's going to be used later on. But it's certainly not the end of the world. But Alberto Contador, who I thought looked very, very nervous, he's got let's be fair, he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders. He's the only rider of the current generation who set his stall out. He's going for the double, but of course, he's not thinking ahead to the Tour de France. He's thinking about firstly winning the Giro. There's a lot of pressure from the sponsorship side of things. Mr. Tinkoff is now on the race. He's ridden today's course.
He's not in the car then today, is he?
No, he's actually ridden ahead. He rode pretty much every stage of the Giro last year, as he does. So, but the team, they're galvanised, aren't they? When you look at the individual riders in Tinkoff Saxo, I would have put them maybe 6th or 7th in the time trial on a good ride. But to come second, they're going to be very, very pleased with that. But 20 seconds on Richie Porte this early into the race, Alberto Contador is going to be very happy and maybe a little bit more relaxed.
An almost perfect start for Alberto Contador then. As you can see, we're not having quite the perfect start ourselves this afternoon, with a few little problems in getting the satellite pictures over from out on the course. So apologies for that.
You just see they're
doing all they can. As we take a look at the finish,
it's a good view, isn't it? It's a good view. I mean, I think because there is a little drop down, I mean, you can just see that's about 800 metres long, and if you turn right, that'll be where the kilometre to go flag is. So there is a bit of a drop before the road kicks up, but I think that will suit a different sort of sprint. I think it'll open up that sprint, and there'll be a few more people perhaps fancying they want to go. And we might actually see a few attacks on the finishing circuit. There's a couple of little ripples on the finishing circuit, as we see Visconti, there's Tuscan on the Movistar team.
Yeah,
he'll like this first week.
Visconti actually born in Sicily, lived a long time in Tuscany. He's got family up in Turin as well. A long history of migrant workers leaving Sicily, moving up to Turin to work in the car factories up there with Fiat and what have you. A lot of Juventus fans down in Italy for that, down in Sicily, pardon me, for that reason. We saw our first little W il Giro sign. That W means long live in Italian, or up the Giro. So the first one, and the first prize of many, I think, goes to the town of Spotorno that we just went through. little bit of a slowing down here as there's the feed zone.
Feed zone time, one of the Français de Jeu, or FDJ as they now know, just swinging to the right-hand side. They can be quite chaotic, but luckily they've knocked off a few kilometres an hour here to make sure that everybody gets the musettes, which is good to see, because they can be very, very difficult situations when you get the musettes wrapped around your front wheel and all sorts, but knock the speed off so everybody manages to get their bidons and their food.
Oh, we're in the province of Savona today. There is Spotorno, just written on the left-hand side of your screen. And this is a little bit of a slowing down now and again. You imagine that the gap's going to grow ever so slightly out again. 7:38 at the minute. On our way to Genoa today, birthplace of Christopher Columbus, Cristoforo Colombo, or even Cristobal Colon, whichever you want to go with. Of course, set out from Cadiz and Seville back in the 1490s when he, in inverted commas, discovered America. I'm not too comfortable with that expression. There were people there before he got there, but we all know what he means. But of course, Genoa having its airport named after Christopher Columbus. 42nd time that we're on the way to Genoa in Giro history, and the 85th time the city's been involved as a headline presence at the Giro d'Italia. It's hosted 43 stage starts. It means it's the joint third most important city in the history of the race, along with the country's first ever capital, Turin, which we'll visit on stage 21. Difference between the breakaway riders and the pink jersey group is 7 minutes and 54 seconds. Still 80 kilometres of mostly flat roads to go. We've got one categorised climb today, and that is the fourth category, Prato Zanino. Nothing too special at all. Basically, it's just a chance to hand the jersey out to someone and please the sponsors, get somebody on the podium at the end of the day. And the way it's going, we'd expect that it's going to be one of the 5 riders up the front. Yeah,
it does look like it. It's they've dealt with the lead of 7 minutes and 47 seconds. I mean, even if the pace has picked up quite quick, actually. It's Luke Durbo the Turbo. Luke Durbridge has been setting the tempo since we've come on air, actually. He's setting a pretty fast tempo and incredibly managing to eat into that lead that was up to 9 minutes on his own. So he's taken back nearly 2 minutes. He hasn't had any assistance that I've seen since we've been on air, but he'll drop back soon when the sprinters take over. But I would imagine he's probably going to spend another 20-25 kilometres on the front trying to hold that. But yes, it's prestigious to get into a jersey. I mean, when I rode the jersey a few years back, there was another jersey as well called ʻdʒiːro, which essentially around halfway through the course it was essentially a mini finish where there was timings, so that basically you had your timer chips, you on your transponders, and so you had a separate points classification and a time classification for halfway through the stage, which made it very, very complicated. So you had 2 winners of the Giro. You had the fastest at the intermediate points throughout the race, and then the fastest overall. Thankfully, they don't have that classification anymore, so us commentators can relax.
I think our current colleague is a former winner of that.
Magnus, yeah.
Magnus Bäckstedt, a former winner.
Yeah, the ʻdʒiːro was very interesting classification. But again, something for the fans. It's something. Some of these stages are very long. The riders are riding for 4, 5, 6 hours a day, and it does break things up. As you see the breakaway here.
Marco Frapporti there on your screen, number 149 with the grey shorts of Southeast, the Italian team. Brand new white jerseys for this. And they've got Alessandro Petacchi in their team. Don't want to say it too loudly, but those jerseys remind me of a team we had a few years ago. That wasn't a team that was taken to the hearts by many in the international world because of a few riders they had. LPR Brakes.
Well, Petacchi rode for LPR Brakes,
didn't he?
Back
in 2009, I think. He won, what was it, the Stage de Valdobbiadene, where we go this year on the time trial. Savona intermediate sprint coming up, by the way. So if Marco Frapporti's up there in the white jersey, alongside him, of course, we've got a rider from CCC who's right at the front. In the meantime, we look at Elget Zupa of Southeast. Marco Frapporti, pardon me, rides for Androin Jokarteli, of course. There is Łukasz Ovsian, who prepared for this race by heading to the Tour of Turkey. Before that, he hadn't raced since hurting himself at the Tour of Andalusia back in February. Fit enough to make his Grand Tour debut. Nippo Vini Fantini with a rider up the front as well. Nippo Vini Fantini with Giacomo Bellato joining all the rest of those guys in the break. And Bert-Jan Lindemann, 25-year-old from the Netherlands, former Vacances Soleil rider who's had 3 wins during his career today, including the GC and a stage of the Tour de l'Ain at the end of last year. So a very, very gifted rider.
Yeah, it's a pretty solid breakaway. So they certainly were let go. I think they were, looking at from the coverage, they were the first riders to attack. There was no real counter-attacks. You quite often see competition for the early break. It can take up to an hour sometimes to split the race, but interestingly they were let go immediately. They were the first 5 riders to go, and they built up a lead very, very quickly indeed. Some very fast roads. It was quite a hilly earlier on. There's no classified climbs. They went up there ๊dʒiːro and then dropped down before their flat coastal run-in, and have built up a very, very solid lead at the moment with glorious conditions out there. Makes it so different, doesn't it, when we're, as you say, we're used to this part of the world. Milan-San Remo over the last couple of years been held in some absolutely atrocious conditions. And interestingly, because I was around at the start a couple of days back, only about 100 meters from the start of the team time trial was the foot of the Cipressa. You know, that iconic climb, of course, that comes on the final few kilometers of Milan-San Remo, and it looked so inauspicious. You know, I actually pulled in the car and rode up part of the climb and recognized it, and there was a couple of signs, and I realized where I was, but it just looked so normal. It just a little old lady with a dog walking up there. Such a comparison to such an integral part, an important part of Milan-San Remo, and there it was, all normal.
It's funny, you realise that people actually do go to work and
yeah, they do. Little cafe on the corner, you know.
Yeah, they head up the hill to the shops in the morning. So 1 kilometre to the first intermediate sprint of this Giro d'Italia. We've got 2 hot on the heels of each other. Only 10 kilometres separate the first intermediate sprint in Savona and the second at Varazze today. We've got bonus seconds and sprint points on the line, and some of these guys are going to fight it out for it. And I think they will race for it today, because we've only got 2 intermediate sprints in a 4th category, so there are jerseys up for grabs, 2 jerseys up for grabs today. And I think the guys for the next few hundred meters or so will start to think of their own ambitions rather than working together again.
Yeah, definitely. Well, these are opportunist breakaways. They've worked hard. They've established a good lead. They've worked very well together. But there are points on offer. There are bonus seconds on offer, which could move one of these riders into the general classification, which again is good for the sponsors. They get mentions in the press, especially the Italians. So imagine, you know, if they finish safely in the bunch with some time bonuses, they could move themselves, you know, well up the classification.
And here it is. A little roll to the side there from the rider from CCC, who is Ovsian. A few little toddles along the front as well.
Looks like Fraportini has just dropped off the back here. I wonder if he's going to launch a bit of an early attack to perhaps catch them unaware. That was it. He's just dropped back a few lengths. There we go.
There is Fraporti. Androni Giocattoli going to take the points and the seconds. Seconds not too important, because none of the riders in this break are of any danger to the overall general classification. Fraporti goes across. Nobody's going to contest it. He'll take first place, and that's some points for him. And 3 bonus seconds as well from Marco Fraporti. He started the day at 1 minute and 41 down, so 3 seconds aren't going to make a difference. Lindemann looks like he's come in 2nd place as well for Team Lotto NL Jumbo. And with 1 more sprint still to go, still anybody's jersey.
Yes, indeed. And of course, a few Euros there as well, so always good.
In fact, it's Jupa who's been racing a few of the classics. Not finishing many, the Albanian rider, but racing for Southeast. I think he probably got 2nd place, but we'll get confirmation of that.
It did look like he got 2nd
in a minute's time.
The only Albanian in the race, of course.
It's Savona then, the Sistine Chapel in the centre of the city. The only other outside of Rome. Savona, big port as well, not too far down the road from Genoa. And of course, tomorrow we're off to Alessandro Petacchi company, La Spezia as well, right in the south of Liguria, very close to the border with Tuscany. You can see food very, very big around here.
Oh, I do. The couple of days I spent in there, I love going to Italy. Not just because of the lovely cities, the countryside, and just the feel of the place, it's the ambience, but it's the food. The food. We stayed in a little rustic hotel. Absolutely gorgeous food. I really, really enjoy my visits to Italy. It's.
As you can see, farinata bianca, wheat and chickpea flour flatbread available in this part of the world.
There we go.
And talking of flatbreads, focaccia ligure comes from just down the road as well, in Liguria, of course. This is where we're racing this week. And we've got pesto genovese from Genoa, pasta al pesto, trofi al pesto. Beautiful, beautiful sauces and breads around this part of the world. Heading into one of the many tunnels on this road that we see in Milan-San Remo. We're going the opposite way, really, today. Heading away from San Remo down towards Genoa. We'll chat in the car with Piotr Wadecki. And we're off for a quick commercial break. Happy birthday indeed to Stig Brooks and Mauro Finetto. Stig Brooks 25 today, from Mol in Belgium, where Wilfred Peters and Tom Bonen hail from. They want to celebrate by winning with Andre Greipel today. Mauro Finetto, in the meantime, turns 30. He's from the region of Verona in the northeast of Italy. Ex-Colnago rider, winner of 2 Turkey stages in 2009. And part of Vincenzo Nibali's Vuelta winning squad in 2010. That's when he was a rider at Liquigas. We're looking at the back of the peloton for the first time really today. 164 there is Caleb Fairley, who's making his Giro d'Italia debut. And 153 Nate Brown of the United States of America. Disappointed to miss Tour of California, but of course that far outweighed by the joy at being selected to ride the first Grand Tour of the year. CCC Sprandi Polkawice at the front on the left-hand side with Łukasz Owsian, the Polish rider. Just coming through to the front now, Lindemann, the Netherlander as well. Trek Factory Racing coming to the front here. Of course, they're looking after ʻdʒiːro. And that intermediate sprint gate coming up as well. Of course, Sky's up the road taking the first set of points.
Yeah, there are points further down, so there'll be a few points that will count towards the red jersey, or the maglia rossa. So that's why we're seeing some of the other teams just getting in the mix.
Calm will once again hit the peloton in just a minute's time. There's Ethics Quick-Step for Bonen and what have you. And there is the rest of the peloton coming across. 71 kilometres remain on the way to Genoa today. Simon Gerrans in pink. He said he smelt like a bar yesterday after spraying the Prosecco all over. 10, 6 and 3 in terms of points for Frapporti, Zuppa and Lindemann. Not quite sure why everybody else was sprinting then. A little confused when they came around the corner. I wonder if there were a few bits of...
I shall dig into the rules book and I'll come back to you in relation to clarifying that there.
These guys are just saying, well, did we just do that for nothing? Down here from Tom Bonen anyway.
We are with Tom Bonen, who missed the peloton for 7 weeks. Tom, it's a comeback for you here. How are you?
All good, yeah, happy to be back.
And how is your shape? How is your all previous injuries?
They're healed. It's going very well. I don't have any problems with my shoulder or my elbow anymore. Now we have to wait and see how it will evolve on a long stage race. But I think it will be okay.
And normally that kind of stage should be a stage for you if you were at 100%. So is it, do you have any goals today?
Yeah, I will try to. I mean, you only know where you are if you try. If I just sit in a bunch, I don't get better. So I will try for sure.
Okay, thank you very much. Good luck.
Please.
Well, talking about knowing where you are, I don't think the directeurs sportifs have read the rule book as strenuously as you've been reading every word of it, Matt, because there was a wasted lead out there, wasn't there, by everybody?
Yeah, well, Trek Factory Racing did put in quite an effort for a couple of kilometres to tee up ʻdʒiːro for that sprint, and he was sprinting essentially for nothing because the points only go down to the top 5, so all those points were mopped up by the various members of the breakaway. And just for those of you at home who are interested in the maglia rossa, or the red jersey competition, points of the hotspots goes is 10, 6, 3, 2 and 1. So all those points are now mopped up. So perhaps a bit of practice for ʻdʒiːro, if nothing else at all.
There's no reason they shouldn't know that there are 5 riders in the break.
Read your manual. As an
Exactly.
ex-manager of a team, you need to read your manual. And they're on radios. It's a World Tour race. It's a Grand Tour.
They've got TVs in the car as well. They've
Exactly.
got Italian Ride television on. They might even be listening to us
If
they've got a satellite on the back as well.
The thing is, I know it's only stage 2. It's early in the race, and you can forgive riders. It does take a while to get into the rhythm of a Grand Tour. I mean, a lot of the riders will be thankful that the team time trials and prologues, you hear in teams that it's a very nervous time, and you look forward to just getting the first road stage out of the way. Then you feel as if you can get into the rhythm of the race properly. So, but perhaps because of the nervousness of the team time trial effort, they didn't read their rule book properly. So they'll be forgiven, but I certainly don't think they'll make that mistake again, because, yeah, a real waste of energy, especially when you look at how hard they were going to lead out îdʒiːro there.
But Jan Lindemann, the virtual maglia rosa, I'm not sure how long that will be for, given the fact that everybody behind, almost everybody wants a sprint today. But Jan Lindemann's 45 seconds off the lead of Simon Gerrans at the minute. Talked about splitting that jersey into 8 other pieces, pardon me, at the front, and in the back into 50 different pieces, because he wanted to reward everybody with a piece of pink. There is the virtual standing, as you can see. Not too much notice needs to be taken that at the minute. Now then, dangerous place to shove your fingers.
Yeah, it looks like he's just moving his sensor that's on the rear stay there, and you can just see as the spokes are going around in slow motion, that's where the sensor is actually passing past. So perhaps sometimes the sensors can twist outwards, so they don't actually go past and actually register. So it looks like he's just trying to nudge that sensor around to actually make contact, I guess. But yeah, a little bit dangerous riding at that speed. He's just down a pothole and he's taken the end of your fingers off. So a lot of the riders do have bladed spokes. So interesting.
This is where we are today. Started in Albenga, that early climb up the Testico, which is a climb that we see in the Trofeo La Igueglia, pardon me, very, very early in the season. Not too much racing up it today, as the first gel since the refueling station is taken on by our friend from Southeast rider Elget Zupa. Albanian rider today riding for the Southeast team, which a few people I know have been a little confused with the sponsors Vini Fantini moving over to the Nippo Vini Fantini team, which is a new team. Southeast actually comes from the old Vini Fantini team, who used to sponsor their team before the doping scandals of the last couple of years with the likes of Sant'Ambrogio and Danilo Di Luca. The management in that team has been ordered to leave by the team owners, so Luca Scinto no longer in charge at that team. And if you want to carry on a team that's had these sorts of scandals, it's probably the right way to go, isn't it?
Yeah, it's essentially, although the infrastructure is still the same, the management have gone, Luca Scinto has now gone, and basically they wouldn't run the team. The sponsor wouldn't come in unless Scinto went. So yeah, probably a good idea. I mean, there's several riders that were obviously part of that original team, but a complete rebranding is a good idea. But you see this in Italian cycling, especially at pro-continental level. But remember that Italy, only have they have very, very few World Tour teams. In fact, it's only one.
Only one
it's
left,
just Lampre Merida. So, but you look at the composition of the jersey. It's just the way Italian cycling is, as we see Varazze.
Well, Varazze is where we're going to have our second intermediate sprint. Varazze has got a real special place in cycling history, both in men's and women's cycling. A lot of races have started and finished here. And if you look back down in the history of the Giro d'Italia, we've been here 4 times. A stage victory in 1976 for Francesco Moser. Giuseppe Di Grande was a winner in 1997. In 2002, we had Giovanni Lombardi winning here. And more recently, 10 years ago, Christophe Lemaivel, the Frenchman, took a win as well in Varazze. It was also the start in women's cycling of the Primavera Rosa women's race, starting here, finishing Sanremo. It's a kind of a version of the Milan-San Remo. Guess who used to train down here? Fausto Coppi.
There we go, the legend.
Getting close to that second intermediate sprint then, and surely the message has got over on the radio back to the peloton now that they don't want to be playing it silly games at the front again.
They don't want to do that twice. We did see a couple of the Track Factory Racing riders having a bit of a chat with each other, maybe thinking, hey, how many riders are up front? But they should know. As I said, they've got full radio communications, as they did yesterday in the team time trial as well.
Colours are absolutely splendid as we're heading into Varazze. Fraporti, Berlato, Lindemann, Ovsian and Zupa at 5 minutes and 43 seconds back are going to take the sprint here, and they're going to share all the points out between them. We're going to see who's going to be in the first jersey. Of course, points to be awarded for the intermediate sprints along the way. course, it's all part of the carrot that's dangled to everybody in terms of making sure that you get riders in a breakaway. It's not just about sponsors, there are prizes to be had, of course.
Exactly, there's many Euros en route too, but to wear you know, the jersey of any of the classifications in the Giro or the Vuelta or the Tour de France is something that you'll remember, especially when you're not a rider that necessarily may even ever win a stage or go for the overall. That's why we see, you know, the racing, you know, and that's why we see such aggressive racing, because it's important, you know, to have a jersey that you can have for the rest of your life. It's great for the team, it's remarkable publicity, and although not a win as such, to say that you carried one of the jerseys is something to have. It's something that's important on your palmares, especially for the smaller riders, basically, that form parts of the team, the domestiques, the gregarios.
Jupa comes to the front as Berlada just swings over to the side. Here's Lindemann now, taking his run at it, and he's going to start his sprint quite early, I think.
He's been reading the book of Frapportini, going from the back.
Well, there is Frapporti, second wheel. He's in the white and dark blue. He now sits up, looks behind to see what's happening. And here comes Lindemann on the left-hand side. Lindemann in the yellow then is going to give it a go. Frapporti going in front of him though. Frapporti on the wheel of Zupa. Frapporti, the Italian, going right through the middle. But Lindemann, who's gone from a long, long way, I'm not sure if he'll get it. He won't. It will be Frapporti again to get it. Maximum points for him. And we have our first points jersey wear at the end of the day.
There you go, good sprint there by Frapporti. Went quite long. I thought Lindemann was going to come round him, and Lindemann was turning a lot larger gear, but didn't manage to do it in the end, and Frapporti really throwing his bike. There's the aerial shot. Lindemann just left it a little bit too late, so a real good turn of speed by the Italian to take his second hotspot sprint.
He drifted off a lot from the back, did Lindemann. Perhaps a little
Maybe
too much.
Too much.
Yeah, he gave himself quite a bit to do. But
it's a good tactic to employ, because it gives you, you know, you can jump, you can build up some speed. So when you pass the other riders, you've got the building up the speed. You should never really attack from second or third wheel. It just takes a bit of time to gather momentum. But I think on that occasion, we see Frapporti had already started his sprint at that point, so perhaps not the most well-read of situations. But there's the man who took it.
Marco Frapporti there. He's got his own personalised helmet as well this year. Nice big design on the top. In the meantime, off the beach, time to see the pink race go by.
Well, there we go. Lots of skin on show there. Well, it just shows how absolutely gorgeous the weather is. I think it's about 75 degrees, but the colour, the clarity of the air, absolutely stunning. Just look at the azure sea and the terracotta roofs. There's so many contrasting colours, absolutely beautiful, as we see El Guerra.
Yeah, Il Gerva, Luca Paolini. There he is. Full beard still on show. You're still running the brown jersey classification, by the way.
Well, earlier on in the season, I mean, I think Paolini might be leading it. I think we might have a separate brown jersey classification for the Giro, to be honest with you.
Just explain to any of the viewers who haven't joined us yet this year on Eurosport cycling, your obsession with the hipster beards in the peloton.
Well, it's not so much my obsession. I think there's a genuine obsession within the pro peloton in relation to beards, and all I'm doing is recognising that by formalising a classification for such individuals. And I think now Bradley Wiggins has moved on. He was a close contender. I think it's still on the shoulders of Paolini by virtue of winning Gent-Wevelgem, of course.
And Simon Geschke is here as well. Yes. Hunting stages and maybe hunting down your brown jersey.
And Geschke, very good rider, good protagonist for the breakaways. He'll like these hilly, punchy stages as well. We'll definitely see Geschke in the mix and perhaps trying to wrestle that jersey from the shoulders of Paolini.
We've got a sponsor yet?
Working on that.
5 minutes and 25. Nice to see the breakaway settling back into work. So important on a day such as this, very, very flat. First time that, for a few weeks at least, many of them have had 25 degrees. Certainly the ones who were racing in the Tour de Romandie, which was pretty awful weather for 4 of the 6 days that we had. It was cool enough every day, it never even got close to 20 degrees. 10.5 and 3 for the top 3. Intermediate sprint at Varazze. 20 points to Marco Frapporti after around 3/4 of this stage.
Berlato there having a chat with his direct sportive, perhaps getting some information through in relation to the time gap. It's coming down now, 5 minutes and 21 seconds, but still worth pursuing. And they're going up the climb. We'll be going up the climb very, very shortly, actually. The climb of the Prato Zanino.
Yeah, and then it'll be time. It's quite a well-designed stage. There's going to be time for everybody to settle down, to try and sort out exactly who they want to put forward for the sprint, GC teams, it's already the second stage. It's a nervous first week of this Giro d'Italia in terms of the parkour. I think the team time trial yesterday will have probably sorted out nerves in terms of first few seconds and differences, because there already are the odd second of difference from anything to 6-7 seconds to a whole minute. Trek Factory Racing again are racing into here. Not quite sure what's going on here. We've looked at the rules several times.
I'm going back into my rule book. I'm double checking because I'm sure I've read it right. Yeah, hotspot sprints. I'm going to read this direct from the RCS rule book. At each intermediate sprint, points rewarded from 1st to 5th. There are 5 riders in the breakaway, 10, 6, 3, 2 and 1. So Trek Factory don't really understand what's happening here.
And the fact that Trek Factory Racing are going for this, by instinct other riders are following.
Yeah, I mean, they would. Perhaps that's what happens, you know, in racing. You think, well, perhaps they know something we don't know. So that's why they actually split it. They've actually gone so hard. I mean, bear in mind,
we might have got the first print run off of the rule book that was wrong.
Yeah, let's not. Yeah, we'll see when we get the run.
It's Viviani, by the way, on the right-hand side, having a right go at this for Sky. Viviani coming across for the sprint. Sprint gate is just ahead of him. Viviani looks as though he's going to get it.
Ooh, that was very close.
Very close, and we'll have to see side on or even head on to see what happened there. ʻdʒiːro and Viviani having a real good go there. My guess is as good as yours.
Just think about how much that's taken out of those riders as well, you know, when we look into this long stage here.
.5 kilometres to go as Matt Stevens reaches for the rule book for a third time. We're just going to double and triple check it for you, because again, on our understanding and in the official rule book which we have in front of us, there are only 5 sets of points for an intermediate sprint. In the meantime, Frapporti, Berlato, Lindemann, Ovsian and Zupa are out there. A conversation between Director Sportif and the man in the jersey, the white jersey that is, for Southeast, Elga Zupa.
Con Giacomo ʻdʒiːro. Giacomo, oggi è una bella opportunità di vincere
a good chance today to win. First stage for you.
Sì, sicuramente oggi è la prima occasione per
I
i
think
velocisti.
Surely today is a stage for the sprinters.
Proveremo a fare del nostro meglio.
And we're going to try and do our best.
Lavoro per te?
Sì, oggi siamo
today the team's working for me.
Quindi avrò la squadra a disposizione.
I'll have the team at my disposition.
Non erano affatto male, quindi oggi
no, I don't think the feelings were too bad yesterday, so we'll see how it goes. That was Giacomo ʻdʒiːro. Thanks to Felix Lowe, by the way, who works for us here at Eurosport, for having a deeper delve into the rule book. He thinks that there are different categories of stages, and here there are points for the first 8 riders. If that's the case, then they need to reprint the book, don't they? Because it's not in our book.
Yeah, the Maglia Rossa, which is the red jersey, which you've seen Mark Cavendish win in the past. There are actual A, B, D and E, C, D and E categories. So in an A and B category, the first 15 on the stage are classified, so 50 points, 35, 25, 18, down to 1 point. Then the C category is the first 10 classified, 25, 18, 12, 8, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then D and E categories, the first 10 are classified for the Maglia Rossa, and that's 15, 12, 9, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And as I say, there we go.
Our graphics department from the official feed at RCS Sport, who provide us with the pictures, the Italian broadcast, haven't helped us out either, which suggests that they're struggling to get their head around the rules. We will find out after the stage and get back to you. The breakaway killer, Chengji of Giant Alpecin, such an important part of the Giant Alpecin lead-out train and approach to a stage, not necessarily in the lead-out itself, but in the first instances of it. He's the man who works so hard on the front of a peloton, puts the hard kilometres in, a la Tony Martin, if you like, to bring breaks back. and he is a very, very good man at the Chinese rider.
Yeah, definitely. That's what his role is. We just sit on the front, keep a hard tempo, a tempo that's just enough to chip away at the leaders in front, and then he'll move along before the real engines get to the front and start lifting the pace to really sort of reduce that lead, and then actually start the lead out towards the back end of the race. But an invaluable role.
Thanks for Lessig Ethu for writing in on Twitter and saying, well, they were just sprinting for the Strava segment, of course.
There is that. Good point.
It's #Home of Cycling if you want to get in touch with us. And we do have it on our understanding that there are points for the first 10 riders now on the intermediate sprint. Cleared that up. Hence the sprint. It wasn't wasted. Back in a minute with the final 60 Ks.
In association with the Israel Ministry of Tourism.
Four minutes and 41 as we're headed towards the only categorised climb of the day. Marco Coledan towards the back. Riding for Trek Factory Racing this year. And here is the breakaway on the climb. Frapporti's at the front. He's the man who's been the best in the sprints competition so far. Surely he's not going to take both.
Well,
Just behind him.
He certainly looks pretty sprightly. He's gone to the front. Looks pretty comfortable. Has the kind of look of somebody that can climb can climb pretty well. Sat a little bit forward on the saddle, which we see many of the climbers tend to sit a little bit forward on the saddle, and the rouleur type of riders tend to sit a little bit further back and use a different muscle groups to pedal. But it looks pretty comfortable at the moment. Quite happy to set the early tempo at the bottom of the climb. We'll see what happens at the top.
Prato Zanino, fourth category climb today. Nothing too much to write home about. I'm sure the views are, though. We're seeing it as they come around every bend at the minute, with Cheng Ji doing his best work to try and bring this breakaway back now. 4 minutes and 40. Welcome back to viewers on British Eurosport. We're approaching Prato Zanino, which is the only classified climb of the day. 57.5 kilometres remain.
There's a lot of pink there, isn't there?
Plenty of pink for 3 weeks on the Giro d'Italia. And the climb's being taken on right now by Frapporti, Berlato, Lindemann, Ovsian and Jupa. And the rider for Nippo there, Berlato, in the orange and navy blue. Italian rider wearing number 122. Just starting to feel the gradients a little, and after the team time trial yesterday, the little bits of a sprint to get the points there, this is a different sensation on the legs now.
Oh, completely different. Frapporti actually looks pretty good. I mean, the young rider, the youngest rider of the breakaway for Nippo Vini Fantini. Berlato, only 23 years of age. Just see him sat at the back there. Looks across at the Jupa, the Albanian. And then we have confirmation of the name of the climb.
Prato Zanino, fourth category climb. It comes just after Cogoleto on the route. Sciaborasca is the section of Prato Zanino where we will go over the climb.
Yeah, Frapporti looks like he's pretty comfortable, turning quite a low gear there. He looks to me the most sprightly of this group. 4 minutes and 26 seconds. So this group are safely going to crest this climb well in front of the peloton. I've no doubt they'll probably take probably 30 seconds to a minute will be lost from the leaders, but these are going to be the 5 riders that are battling out for the first Maglia Azzurra, the blue jersey.
You can see the commissar with his head out the window. It's a head out the window sort of day to take the sun, get that sunroof open, isn't it? Look behind then from Berlato, the man you were just talking about there, Matt. At the front now is Łukasz Ovsian, the Polish rider. He's in the orange and black for CCC. By the way, they're back at the Giro for the first time in 12 whole seasons. Last time they were here, it was Pavel Tonkov riding for them.
Well, Pavel Tonkov himself, a winner of the Giro way back in 1996, I seem to remember, riding for Mapai as they were back then. But a rider I actually raced against way back in the milk race in 1990 as a youngster. He soloed into Nottingham. He held off the peloton for 60 kilometres on his own. So very, very classy rider. But you forget how long CCC Sprandi Pokowice has been around. They've been around for a very, very long time, and a very, very, they've got a big budget. They've got apparently the biggest team bus, although the Pro Continental, they've got the biggest and best team bus in the peloton.
Well, they're spending a lot of money at the minute. I have it on very, very good authority from our good friend, the Polish journalist Paweł Gadzawa, as we've got a gear problem and a chain dropped. A chain drop for Marco Frapporti, quickly managing to get it back in the ring, and I think that with a little bit of an effort, he might be able to get back on. The problem is, though, here we're inside the last 900 metres of the climb, and the sprint has begun for those points. It's Bellato who's gone off the front. He looks behind and assesses the damage, and the first fight for mountain points underway.
It is. Look at Bellato. He actually looked like he was the rider that was struggling the most, and I think actually Frapporti was looking to try and change onto the big ring, and that completely mucked it up. I don't know whether they're running electronic or mechanical gears, but the youngster, the 23-year-old, has stolen a bit of a march. Has it gone a little bit too early, perhaps?
Well, this is exactly what the Italians would love. An Italian in the maglia azzurra, the blue jersey at the end of the day. Sign number 2 for Long Live the Giro d'Italia. And that award goes to Pratozanino. And this is Ovsian now on the left-hand side. CCC wanting to make some sort of headline on their return to the Giro d'Italia. There they are in the orange. They have Sylvester Smid to lead the general classification challenge. Plenty of Poles on the side of the road cheering them on with the national flags, which is always great to see. It's not just an Italian race, but now an international icon of world cycling. Bellato on the left. There's 2 orange jerseys at the back. You've got Lindemann just looking, watching, waiting. Still a couple of hundred metres to go.
It is cat and mouse here. The youngster's now gone to the front. Perhaps it would have been best leaving it, turning quite a big gear. Looking pretty strong, and he did look like the rider was in most distress. I thought Frapporti looked good, but he's way out of the back now. But these guys are really slowing down now, perhaps giving an opportunity for the riders that have been detached to get back on terms. But this is turning out to almost be a track sprint.
So the sprint from behind is launched again. Ovsian is the man at the front. Lindemann looking strong on the right-hand side. He just about missed out on the sprint points. Here he goes, though. Lotto, Jumbo, NL want to take a jersey at the end of the day. The Mountains jersey is going to be theirs. And Bert-Jan Lindemann makes it a very worthwhile breakaway. He tops the 4th category climb first. Ovsian second. Bellato tired out in 3rd. And the breakaway needs to find some sort of reorganisation, otherwise it'd be over pretty quickly indeed. They have 4 minutes and 7 seconds, and we have a first king of the mountains of this Giro d'Italia, and that is Bert-Jan Lindemann.
Oh, bear in mind they've only had 1 win this year. That's going to be a very important jersey. That's the first mountains jersey of the year. You know, the first Grand Tour mountains jersey has been awarded to a team that haven't had the best of starts, and here it was on the right-hand side. Actually, it was a very, very strong sprint. Opened up a gap. Looks like he's in actually slightly a lower gear. Really high revs there. Looks over. That's going to mean a hell of a lot to Lindemann. So when you think, you know, taking the Tour de l'Ain as he did last year, he clearly can ride the climbs well. That's quite a hilly race down in France. But again, a real look at him stamping on the pedals there. Nothing the young Bellato could do about it. And Osvan as well. So Lindemann finds himself in the blue jersey.
A little punch of the air there for the cameras as well. Bert-Jan Lindemann enjoying himself riding.
He can say that now for the rest of his life. I was the mountains leader in the Giro. That you got to admit, that's pretty cool, isn't it?
It's his first ever Giro d'Italia as well, so that's brilliant to see. Ciao Giro d'Italia.
I love the way that the Italians take this race to their hearts. It's so important to them. An absolutely wonderful race that the Italians dearly love.
The Australian champions jersey of Heinrich Hausler inside the bunch in the peloton there as the climb is being taken on with Alberto Contador towards the front there. And Alberto Contador, there was a funny moment on Italian television last night. Every one of the big 4 that we talked about, Aru, Uran, Port and Contador, they were asked by the national television just to send a nice sporting good luck message to the adversaries last night. Port said, yeah, good luck everybody, good luck mate, good luck Uran. Of course, great friends with Rigoberto Uran as they used to ride together at Sky. Uran says, yeah, no problem. Muchísima suerte, he said in Spanish. Aru, in bocca al lupo, good luck in Italian for everybody. Contador, no, I'm not doing it, he said. Not interested. That means he's flicked the switch now. He's in Grand Tour mode. He's nervous, positively so. He looked tense yesterday. He had the best result out of the 4 of them. But though, Matt, there was just a suggestion that his team had to wait up for him a little towards the end.
Yeah, well, they set the fastest intermediate check, and just after that, I mean, it was the young Irish Dane. Both passports, I believe, the young Christian Jensen, a lovely chap. He led off the ramp, but Boiro was there. All the team were riding really well. They set their fastest time check, and just if you look on the right-hand side, there's Ivan Basso, twice a winner of the Giro d'Italia, and just to his right-hand side is the outright favourite for this race, without a doubt, Alberto Contador. But yeah, after half distance, they set the fastest intermediate check. They were faster than Orica at that point. Then the team did start to fracture somewhat, and we did see Alberto Contador losing the wheel with Basso just on his wheel. I don't think even Basso could shut the gap. And there was a few on social media lit up, didn't it? It was like, what's happening to Alberto? You know, he's struggling on the wheel. But let's deconstruct this. First, let's look at the result. Put 20 seconds into
Nothing
Richie
wrong with
Porte.
the result.
He went very, very quickly, and look at the class and the specialist that Orica Green Edge had. You know, they've got some of the fastest track riders in the world. And Contador himself has come from training at altitude at Tiede, and hasn't raced for 40 days, as we see. And Basso just setting a tempo at the front here, maybe keeping Alberto out of trouble. One or two riders in a little bit of difficulty at the back, but you know, I think. Just looking at Alberto Contador isn't a specialist at the shorter, flat time trial, and I think his team put him into a little bit of difficulty. But it's always very tough coming back and riding at really, really high speeds when you've just been training for endurance, doing 7-hour rides, averaging kind of 280, 300 watts for the whole distance. It's a completely different effort to be dropped in to a team time trial effort, trying to keep those high speeds. But he did it. You know, he rode a very good test, but his team did put him under the cosh, which ironically he's kind of thankful for.
But Jan Lindemann, you're just seeing getting the confirmation of his lead in the King of the Mountains classification. Only a 4th category climb, so just 3, 2 and 1 points available for the first 3 to cross. And in the meantime, Manuele Boiro, Ivan Basso, the Italians from Tinkoff Saxo doing a bit of work. Ivan Rovny, who's also a very, very useful man in this sort of ever so slightly hilly terrain. It's going to go flat again towards the end, but why not have a bit of a stretch of the legs and keep Alberto Contador safe? It
just keeps him out of trouble. And you've also got Roman Kreuziger just sat there 5th wheel on the wheel of Rovny. So all of the arguably the only rider I can't see is Mick Rogers. I was about to say the 5 best climbers of Tinkoff Saxo. You can't forget Mick Rogers. I mean, look at the stellar year he had.
Wanted Zoncolan man last year.
One up Zoncolan, won a stage in the Tour, and then won another stage, of course, in the Giro.
Not far from here, actually. Very, very close to here.
But no, they've got a very, very strong team. But interesting to see them setting the tempo there. But I think it's purely just to keep Alberto out of trouble. Problems
for Giacomo Nizzolo. You said that a few riders have been put in trouble towards the back. Nizzolo had used quite a bit of energy up to get the points in that intermediate sprint that we talked about. In the end, yes, the points going down to the top 10. Excuse our little problems trying to delve into the rule book about 15 minutes or so ago. But interesting that the rhythm at the front has just put him into a little bit of a problematic area. You see Vaikkonen in that group as well. 137 for Orica Green Edge's Michael Hepburn, who takes a beat on from the car. They're not going to have any problems getting back on towards the end here, but of course it's energy that he wanted to save for the finale.
Exactly. It's I don't think these riders will panic. He'll use the other riders, and what Tinkoff Saxo won't do, once they've gone over the top of the climb, they might lead down the descent to keep Alberto out of problems until they get onto the flat part. But I think purely they're going to be a little bit nervous. The first road stage of any Grand Tour is always a little bit nervous. It takes a while for the riders to settle in, and I think that's exactly what's happening here. They're just keeping Alberto out of trouble. They're not necessarily trying to drop anybody. They've got no real interest. They haven't got a sprinter on the team, Tinkoff Saxo. It's an opportunity just to open things up a little and keep Alberto out of trouble. And I think that Nizzolo won't find it too difficult to get back on. He's got the convoy after all, but Boiro still on the front for Tinkoff.
Nizzolo not the only one. We saw one of the YAM cycling sprinters, Matteo Pelucchi, also dropped towards the back there. Of course, YAM cycling with both Heinrich Hausler, the Australian champion, and Matteo Pelucchi, the Italian sprinter in the Swiss team. They have 2 options. And look at the gap. Little bit of a dig, that's all it takes, and 3 minutes and 1. They've just chopped 2 minutes off in the space of around 5 to 10 minutes.
Exactly. I think we'll see the breakaway still rolling through, but they know, I mean, they've the hotspot sprinter done and dusted. Fraporti has taken both of those. We have a leader, or the first leader in the Maglia Azzurra, the blue jersey, and that's going to be Lindemann. So really, you know, apart from staying out in front for a bit longer, there's no real point in trying to maybe do anything else, because they've dropped two of the number. We're not sure if Fraporti has got back on. But well, here we go. I think this is riders that are detached from the back of the peloton now. It really does rear up at the top here.
Well, we mentioned Matteo Pelucchi. He's the man second wheel there in the navy blue with 86 on the back. He's got a red helmet on as well. He's the Italian sprinter. Just behind him, you've got Marco Colledan, who's a new signing for Trek Factory Racing this year. Another Italian rider who's come from the 2nd division professional continental ranks. And I think that a lot of the sprinters teams who have managed to keep their sprinters in the group here, they'll be delighted with the general classification team because they're giving them a free ride and they're cutting the gap for them. They don't have to do the work here.
Yeah, I must admit, I didn't expect to see Tinkoff go, I wouldn't call it going on the offensive, but riding so actively at the front. This isn't an offensive manoeuvre in relation to distancing the general classification riders. It's just perhaps a show of strength. It's basically, we're second in the team time trial, we're just going to move to the front, we're going to put a few guys on the front, we're going to make it a little bit difficult for you just to impose themselves psychologically, which is very, very important.
The break is back up to 5 riders, as we suspected would happen. And they need to start getting together and working together again here. 50 kilometres to go, 3 minutes and 32 is the current gap, as they briefly go into one of those tunnels.
Yeah, this landscape absolutely, well, it's so many tunnels. I always marvel at the engineering on this coast, especially when you well, from Nice to San Remo and along. It's just tunnel after tunnel of these winding, most beautiful roads. You're looking out to the right at the Mediterranean. But I sometimes sit there and think when I'm in the car, how long must this have taken to carve the way through the mountainside and the hills? It's a real feat of engineering, but it does make for some spectacular bike racing.
It continues across the border into France as well, part of the way up to Monaco and Nice, and it sort of stops when you get past Monaco.
Of course,
really.
yeah.
But yeah, it's absolutely amazing, stunning piece of road. And
We've
had the first crashes of the Giro d'Italia.
So there's a BMC rider and a Bardiani rider as well down there. 3 riders in total. Just overcooked that bend, perhaps just a touch of wheels. We'll get confirmation of those numbers.
Exactly who's in there. There's Carlos Betancourt at the back. He's only just avoided it. The 152 for Cannondale is Javier Acevedo, another Colombians involved, both Betancourt and Acevedo. In the meantime, up the front, Astana and Tinkoff Saxo carry on, not too aware of what's happened, and that's a real problem. A real problem for Bardiani. Now, the rider involved for Katusha is the 1-7 through Sergej Czernetsky and Enrico Barbin. Enrico Barbin, he's holding his left arm, and that doesn't look good. By the way, we had one non-finisher already in the Giro today. Remember, that's the southeast rider, Ramon Carretero, who comes from Panama. Enrico Barbin, in his second Giro d'Italia, just being checked out by the doctor before he can continue. And big moment for Bardiani, because they'll be wanting to animate the stages as much as possible. What is it from here? If the doctor gives him the OK, it's just soldiering on to the end and thinking about tomorrow, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, he was moving his wrist there. It's clearly tender. The doctor's just double checking, but given the amount of movement there, it looks like he will be back on his way. The mechanics are just preparing his spare bike. But yeah, basically it hurts. There's no padding at all. It's the thinnest material there, that really thin lycra, skin-tight tops that they wear now, offering no protection at all. And when you hit the deck at those kind of speeds, it hurts. I think he looked like he went into the wall there as well. So sometimes when you slide, you just take the skin off. There's not so much impact, but hitting a brick wall, not too good.
Inside the final 50 kilometres of stage 2 of this 2015 Giro d'Italia. The Tour of Italy winding its way along the hills and the coastal section of Liguria.
It really is winding today, isn't it? It's,
it is.
In a literal sense. Still Tinkoff on the front, still Manuel Boaro, sat first man. Alberto Contador tucked in about 3rd or 4th place there.
152 at the back is Javier Acevedo, just in front of him Carlos Betancourt. Betancourt here riding for Domenico Pozzovivo and Agir La Mondiale with a pretty poor start yesterday, I have to say. One French team, Française des Jeux, has improved exponentially in the team time trial. They had a really good placing. In fact, in the end, I think they were even better than Team Sky.
They stuck a second into Team Sky, which, I mean, you know, let's be honest with you, I don't think anybody out there who fancies a punt or a bit of a bet would have thought FDJ. And that isn't to take anything away from Mario's team at all. They're a World Tour squad. They're very well drilled squad. Big aspirations in the Tour de France coming up as well, of course. But no, they've got a very good team. And yeah, a big surprise to put a second into Team Sky.
Southeast with Zupa at the front. Here is Enrico Barbin back on his bike, thankfully. And I don't think anybody will begrudge him a little bit of help from the car to get back.
No, definitely not. And just looking at the way he's holding his bike there, he looks to be in the normal sort of position. Sometimes you see riders, if they've got even some riders, we've heard of riders getting up and trying to ride on with a broken collarbone. such is the tenacity and toughness of pro bike riders. Absolutely incredible, the sort of accidents they pick themselves up from, dust themselves down. We saw Alberto Contador last year in the Tour, of course, riding with a fractured leg, albeit a minor fracture. He still tried to ride on, but it looks there as if that rider will hopefully get back on terms. He looks pretty straight on his bike.
Back with the breakaway. 3 minutes and 30 is their gap as we head towards Genoa. Getting to Genoa with around 20 kilometres to go, and then we've got 2 circuits today. Inner city circuits, I might add, of 9.5 kilometres. It's probably about the right time, Matt, to start looking at who we think might win this race today in terms of the stage. You've got big favourites in the shape of probably Andre Greipel. Won 2 stages on the Giro before. The first time he ever won on the Giro, it was a 1-2 for Team High Road. Mark Cavendish's teammate on the day. And they went across the line together, both arms in the air. A really beautiful picture in today's Gazzetta dello Sport of Greipel coming first, the man from Rostock in former East Germany. It's actually a port on the Baltic Sea. As their big rivals, Gian Alpecin, come back to the front for Luca Mezgec. Is another guy who could win today, but it was in Locarno in Ticino, in the Swiss region, where they had the finish. So he's actually only won one of his Giro stages on Italian soil. So the other one being in Switzerland. He won in Brescia the last time he was at the Giro, that was in 2010. Hasn't ridden here since then. This year said he fancied a bit of a different change, a bit of a different programme. It's good to see Andre Greipel here, and when you see the guys he's up against, the likes of Pelucchi, Apollonio, maybe Bonen or Mersman, we don't know who yet. Michael Matthews is on form. Hofland, who won recently. Elia Viviani's, Łukasz Ovsing, it's a little too close to the car there.
It's a little bit sketchy, wasn't it? No, I mean, it's, you have to, I mean, without a doubt, the gorilla, as is known, Andre Greipel, the national German road champion, will certainly be in the mix.
And we've seen his team adding a couple of riders to the front as well.
Yeah, we've seen Lotto putting one rider at the moment. Still 45 kilometres to go. They're certainly not going to commit too many riders, but we've seen them put one of their riders in red at the front. And that's what teams do. It just, that's a good indicator of teams' intentions, just to put one rider at the front to assist in the pacemaking. But increasingly, over the last few years, you know, where in relation to lead-out trains, we've seen teams leave it very late. They'll put riders in the front to ride tempo, but then the trains come very, very late in the last 4 or 5 kilometres, because the pace over the last few years has got higher and higher. We've got better drilled squads, and Lotto have a very, very, a Lotto Soudal, of course, 2 Lottos riding, Lotto NL Jumbo in the yellow, Lotto Soudal in the red. But Hofland off the back of a win, and of course they've now got leader in the mountains classification. They'll know that, that will come back through the radios, giving them the extra bit of motivation. So I think we'll definitely see Marina Hofland in the mix as well. There's a couple of outsiders, well, not all outsiders, ʻdʒiːro, and then the Lampre squad. I think they probably have the best roster in terms of depth. Richesi has a real outsider, and then of course Roberto Ferrari. But I think the out-and-out sprinter, the protected rider for Lampre, will be Sasha Modolo.
Yeah, Modolo, I think, would be very disappointed if they didn't ride for him. He said in our interview very early on with Vincent Renault, our Eurosport colleague who was talking to him, that he would be the man today. There's Gianni Savio, we mentioned him yesterday, Swiss Tony.
All his own hair.
Fast Show fans.
All his own hair, though, as well. He's not holding on to his toupee or anything like that, so which is good to see. Now, what a character he is. It's incredible, the way, like I say, the way he's brought his team. Always manages to have a team. Always managed to get a ride in the Giro. So important, fundamental, isn't it, really? But great to see him there, sticking out the window and passing on some encouragement to his liege.
Bert de Backer there, we saw the man who played a hugely important role in John Degenkolb's Paris-Roubaix success. He goes back to his usual lead-out train job here, but he's got to get back on the peloton. You suspect he was just going back to the car there as we come through to Arenzano. And it's about that time approaching, isn't it? No more feeding with 20 Ks to go, and nobody's want to be going back to the car at all inside that final circuit. So yeah, if you want drinks, bottles, bits of instructions, although you do have the radio, but it's always good sometimes to have a face-to-face chat with somebody who can pass on instructions to the road captain, who's going to do the business at the front. This is the time to start talking to Director Sportif.
Exactly. Well, 44 kilometres to go, so given the fact that the pace will increase dramatically at the back end, I mean, the average speed is just under 42 kilometres an hour so far today. So we're looking at under an hour of racing, around about 55 minutes of racing still to go. As Manabu Isibashi is detached. One of the many riders has been detached on this climb, trying to chase to get back on. But no, it's going to be an interesting finale. So you want to get all your drinks, all your gels in situ. Bearing in mind, this is the first, it's the first road stage of the race. I've already said it's quite nervous, so you want to be basically at the head of the field as we hit those finishing circuits.
44 k's to go. We're off a commercial break. All the sprint action still to come. Trek Factory Racing joined the chase. Sprinter schemes coming back to the front after the climb is over. Tinkoff Saxo did most of the work up the hill. Trek Giant and Lotto Soudal. Expecting a sprint today in Genoa. Stranger things have happened though than
you never know.
the expectation coming true.
There are more opportunities, I think, on a circuit than a straight running. There are technical elements, but it's a big circuit, but it's completely urban, with a finishing straight around seven meters wide. Not the widest finishing straight, not the narrowest, but I think that incline could prove interesting, perhaps provide opportunities. But I think given the few opportunities for the sprinters teams, they're going to want to make sure they keep it all together and try and neutralise any potential attackers. So I have a feeling we're not going to see a sprint.
Still 5 up the front, 2 minutes and 38 as the sprinters teams take over behind. Time for some last-minute refreshment, some sugar and a bit of energy if you can. Not always the best stuff for a bike rider when training, but in racing towards the end of a stage it can give you that extra kick.
It certainly can. It's quite often you'll see the riders actually sharing it around. There you go, right on cue. Thank you very much. The check is in the post, young man.
Yeah, got you on race radio.
Yeah, there you go. You just share it around, and you know, these guys are going to be in a way. You know, they're still going to be out front for another probably 10 or 15 kilometres, but the impetus has gone out. They're still rolling through. They're still on television, of course, but the classification has been decided. But they're still going to be live on television.
We saw Ilio Kessa doing some bottle running there. Now, before the break, we were talking about favourites for the stage, the likes of Andre Greipel in the sprint, you mentioned as well, ଼dʒiːro. One we haven't talked too much about is Matteo Pelucchi, who rides for Yam Cycling. It's either going to be him or Hausler that they have a go with today. And I'd like to thank @RCS Subidas on Twitter for pointing this out and reminding us that, of course, it's a very, very difficult time. It has been a difficult time the last few years. He's had time off the bike competitively as Matteo Pelucchi, his girlfriend, a former cyclist herself at junior level, a fantastic piste rider, Marina Romoli, who very, very tragically became paralysed. And they do a heck of a lot of charity work together. Of course, Pelucchi encouraged to get back on the bike by his girlfriend, Marina Romoli, who does a bit with the Italian television as well, as we see the first tweet of the day from Trek Factory Racing. And there you go, points 10 deep. Giacomo Nizzolo wants the points jersey. Another man who wants it is Matteo Pelucchi. Can he do it today? First little look of the bottle running jacket, and it's not quite easy to get on, is it, for Sam Bewley there?
It isn't. We saw these last year. I think we're one of the first teams to use them. It was at the Tour de France last year. Tinkoff Saxo and their clothing manufacturer Sportful, they had one. I think other teams, other manufacturers of jerseys have now taken note, but you didn't want that swinging into your back wheel, but managed to get it on, showed remarkable dexterity at speed there. So hopefully he'll be back in the peloton as the assigned barman, /sommelier perhaps, don't know what's in those bottles, but no, managing to get it back on. But yeah, another bit of interesting methodology. Of course, the jerseys these days are so skin tight. It's a little bit more difficult to get that many jerseys. I think when I was racing, the jerseys weren't the club style jersey of now. Far more room to get bottles stuck in. So that is obviously an interesting development, the bidon jacket or the bidon gilet.
Lotto Soudal looking for Greipel. Viviani also here, Nizzolo, Matthews, Lovato, Pelucchi, we mentioned. Modolo, who won a stage in Turkey. Hofland, the stage runner in Yorkshire. And 22-time stage winner at this Giro d'Italia, Alessandro Petacchi. What does he have left?
Well, he's wily, isn't he? I mean, he's wily, he's very, very strong. He won a race last year, didn't he? When riding for Quick Step, of course. But the autumn of his career, without a shadow of a doubt. It's a very long, prolonged autumn for Petacchi.
There's Voltri, the Costa Concordia. Remember that, when that sunk in the Tyrrhenian Sea. Actually docked in the city's port, just outside of Genoa. You can see Genoa now, right in the foot of that shot. That was Genoa Airport where we saw in the huge, huge port. The city of the lantern. In fact, the city's football derby's the derby of the lantern. Sampdoria versus Genoa. And Philippe Gilbert time, back to the car. Great to see him riding the Giro again. Last time he was here, he was a stage winner as well when he was in, it was Lotto colours back in those days.
So long ago now. But no, I think when you look at the profile of this race, 6 flat stages, primarily built for sprinters. Then we have the mountains, but there's lots of intermediate not semi-mountain stages, but really punchy stages.
Tomorrow's
a couple of uphill
interesting
drags. So I think there are a few stages that will suit Philippe Gilbert, including today. We might see him in the mix today, given that gradual rise to the top, but perhaps just a bit too fast. But I think we'll see him at or near the head of affairs, perhaps testing his legs.
Well, we've got a 4% rise that's taken on twice during the circuit as well. It lasts around a kilometre, 4% when you're in a fairly fresh peloton, as the jerseys are on show at the finish line. And 4% is something that isn't really going to tax you too much.
Not at those sort of speeds, no.
Off for a quick commercial break then. Sprint is coming up. We're well inside the last 40 Ks of stage 2. We're heading to Genoa.
In association with the Israel Ministry of Tourism.
A very warm welcome back. 2 minutes and 13 is the latest time check on Frapporti, Bellato, Lindemann, Ovsian and Zupa. Italy, Netherlands, Poland and Albania represented in terms of the nationalities of the riders today in the break. And we mentioned the Costa Concordia before. And there it is, waiting in the dock, in piece back together. The largest ever ship in recent times to have sunk in these waters.
It's like a mini town, isn't it? It's a floating city.
Welcome back to our British viewers. We're just looking at images of the Costa Concordia, which you mentioned just before the break. In the meantime, it's having a chat with Cheng Ji. Well done for the work that you've done today, boys. First Chinese rider to finish the Tour de France last year, Cheng Ji, for Giant Alpecin. Started the Giro last year, didn't finish it. As we look at Genoa. Typical bustling port city.
All the container ships there.
Voltri is the port just alongside it. We mentioned the airport's just behind, then you've got the separate port of Genoa itself. Genoa famous for so much. We've talked about the cuisine and the pasta al pesto. It was once the centre of an empire as well, the Genoese Empire that did run this part of Italy when Italy was over 150 years ago divided into kingdoms. You had Florence and Siena. You had Rome and the Papal States as well, Venice, which was another huge empire that everybody will know about too. Milan, and of course down the south, most of it ruled by the Vatican at the time. But yeah, Genoa, a big empire in this part of the world. And it was an empire of seafaring people. They went on to take Corsica and other islands in the Tyrrhenian Sea. Now the centre, in Italy anyway, of a huge port and very well known for its soccer teams. Talked about Sampdoria. And Genoa, in fact, is the first and the oldest football team to be founded in Italy. Founded by an Englishman, William Garbett, who started it all. As we see Christopher Columbus's home.
It's a relatively modest abode.
It's funny, you go to all these little cities around the world and they've got Christopher Columbus was here, he was there. You go down into Andalusia, the south of Spain, it's the same thing. And in my old home in Gran Canaria, the house you can stay in was the last night he spent in the Canary Islands before he crossed the Atlantic and went to South America. Cristobal Colon, Cristoforo Colombo, Christopher Columbus, however you know him, was born here in Genoa.
Brakes still working really well together here. Perhaps being encouraged, or definitely encouraged by the vast amount of people that have come out onto the streets here. We just saw Frapporti just ushering the youngster Giacomo Bellato through.
Crowds have been wonderful this first weekend of the Giro. Of course, we're not averse to seeing big crowds at the Giro, but the weather helps. Of course, it's the first real passage, prolonged passage in Liguria for a few years.
Yeah, it's an absolutely gorgeous part of the world. It's a stunning coastline, and clearly people out on holiday enjoying the sunshine, enjoying the beaches. And there's a first view. Look at that arrowhead on the peloton there. You can just tell there's not too much wind. They're setting a reasonable tempo, and there's no real sense of urgency there. And you can just see all the groupings of the colours on the left-hand side. Well, in the centre you can see Tinkoff Saxo, then Movistar, BMC in the red in the centre of your screen. And just number 191 on the right-hand side of your screen. That's the Tasmanian himself, Richie Porte, flanked by his teammates, and Bernie Eisel, number 192. The giant calves of Bernie Eisel there on the right-hand side. Perhaps we'll see him. I mean, we talked about the sprinters, and we forgot to mention in our last conversation that Elia Viviani will be interesting to see if he does have some assistance. But at the moment, it's just about making sure that Richie Porte's kept out of trouble. And sometimes the best place to be is just on the edge of the peloton rather than right in the centre.
Well, you mentioned Elia Viviani. Viviani, of course, has been at the Giro before. He had a really nasty crash in Scheldeprijs towards the end of the cobbled classics. He's 26 now. He's come from the track school. Very, very good on the track. Of course, went back to the World Championships to ride on the track as well this year.
A couple of medals, in fact, didn't he?
Rode really, really well. He's won a stage in the Dubai Tour for Team Sky. That's his only win at Sky so far. He went to the Tour of Romandie the other week to hone his form on the climbs. Many of his sprint rivals choosing to go to the Tour of Turkey instead, which is more of a flat race and provides opportunities for sprinters. For you, Matt, as we look at Genoa and the old port and its aquarium, what would you prefer as a sprinter? Wins in Turkey, a chance to win in Turkey, or hard work on the climbs of Romandie to prepare for the Giro?
It's a difficult one. I mean, he's had a very up and down season. He crashed very heavily as well in Tirreno, didn't he? You know, got caught on the outside when Mark Cavendish, remember, slipped his gears, and poor old Viviani came down in that crash. But it's a difficult one. He's going into he's never won a stage in the Giro. He's Italian. I think perhaps the sunshine of Turkey would have been a little bit more preferable, but he's got it in his legs. And sometimes, you know, riding hard in Romandie, it will still do you good. You might not necessarily enjoy the experience as much. And there perhaps weren't as many sprint opportunities, because generally the sprints there were dominated by Albacini. Again, took 3 stages last year, Albacini, didn't he? 2 stages this year. But the sprints in Romandie, generally, it's a race I've ridden myself. It's generally a group of 30 or 40 riders who can climb really well. They're sort of punchers rather than a pure sprinter. So not really too many opportunities with Viviani. But he seems in good health, he's in good morale, good spirits, and will certainly be in the mix. It's just whether he's doing it solo or he has the assistance of some of his teammates. But perhaps he might be assigned one rider. But again, we'll know in the next few kilometres.
Coming into Genoa now, not too far away from the start of the circuit. That starts in 10 kilometres time. All busy with ships, as you see that little graphic at the bottom, just running through the naval history of this great city. It's one of those old cities quite close to the port. You've got really narrow streets, paving stones. In fact, we're going to go over a few paving slabs on part of the route itself. It's not quite Paris-Roubaix, but it's not quite normal road either, as we see the last few bottles being given out. Lotto Sudol doing a good job for their German champion. There he is on the right-hand side, Andre Greipel, the gorilla from Rostock. Can he take the win today? 2 wins in the Giro d'Italia for him. It's the Grand Tour where he's won the least, but of course it's probably also the Grand Tour where he's raced the least as well. He's been exclusively a Tour de France man in the last few years, racing heavily in spring classics. This time he's having a go at the Giro. You can see the average race speed today. Nothing to really write home about, given the profile that we've had. 41.346 kilometres per hour so far, with just over 30 kilometres to run. Less than 30 kilometres to go now. 2 minutes and 3. The peloton doing really, really well to work together. The sprint teams, that is, at the front, making sure that the break isn't brought back too early to cause a little bit of chaos, and certainly unwanted chaos in the peloton at the minute, with it only being day 2. General classification guys don't want to be bothered today. In the meantime, we're learning about the culture of the Ligurian region. Historic workshops, those are now really narrow streets that I was talking about, and some beautiful, beautiful food in this area. There you go, poor man's Viagra. The chilies, and there's the focaccia all'aglio, with some beautiful pine nuts and oil as well. Oh, we're talking pesto genovese. Beautiful looks.
Making me feel hungry. Can we go and grab dinner now?
Let's get back to the bike racing quickly. Pasta of gianduja as well. Baci di Dama not far away from here as well. beautiful little Italian desserts, especially biscuits with a bit of chocolate inside, but it tastes a lot better than it sounds. That's a pretty simplistic description. Back to the racing anyway.
No, the food, I mean, you never really get when you come to Italy and you race, especially when you stay at the non, homogenous hotels, when you stay at the rustic, authentic, family-run hotels. That's where you see some of the best cuisine, and it gives you such good morale as a bike rider, because what you see nowadays on the Grand Tours is, especially for the World Tour teams, is the trucks that follow behind. They have their own chefs and they're on the food, but in many of the Italian races the food is that good that they generally trust the hotels to make them the right food, so that's something that's special about Italy, is the quality generally of the cuisine.
Pierpaolo De Negri, riding for Nippo Vini Fantini in the orange and navy blue, was born in Genoa, as you could see from that graphic. That's the big difference, isn't it, I think, for a lot of people between the Tour and the Giro. People always say, oh, why do you prefer the Giro? Because I think most people within cycling will say, yeah, the Tour is the Tour. It's a big cliche, I should say. I apologise for getting that one out, but it's one that people often repeat. The Tour is the Tour, but I love the Giro. I love the Giro. It's the sort of nameless, faceless hotels that you get in the middle of nowhere in France that people, and bike riders and teams in particular, they have to spend just one or two many nights out there. In Italy, yeah, you get that when you get to the industrial areas of the country, but there's the little out-of-town country hotels that are different, that do offer that personal touch, as we saw very early on in our VT piece, where we saw the team time trial celebrations last night. By the way, we'll just cut off because that is the very, very sore-looking backside of Sergei Chernetsky, who was involved in the fall earlier on. He's a stage winner of the Tour of Catalonia this year, Chernetsky, a former winner of the Tour of the Fjords, and he's racing in the peloton. I think he's going to be, apart from having a sore evening, everything's going to go okay from now on. But back to the hotels and the sort of logistics of everything. People do prefer the Giro, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the interviews recently with riders, well, specifically, we talk a lot about Alberto Contador, but that direct question was asked. You've gone for the double. Which is your favourite race, and he said, the Vuelta is important because it's his home tour. The Tour de France is the most important race in the world, and it is the Tour. As you said, you can say nothing more. It is the Tour. It has its own innate beauty, but there's something very, very special about the Giro. And so for Contador, it is, although it's not his home, he feels that he's at home there, and that's what most riders will say. Bradley Wiggins, for one, he tried to come to the Giro a couple of years back off the back of winning the Tour. It didn't quite come off, but the reason he did it was because it's such an important race within the context of bike racing, and it's something special. It's something that's very difficult actually to put into words, but it's just very rich in history. It passes through some of the most stunning, difficult, beautiful terrain, and as I said, right at the top of the program, it's unformulaic. On day 5 here, we have the first hilltop finish at Abetone. When I rode back in 2000, day 2, we were going over a first category climb. There was no chance to bed yourself in.
They don't mess about, do they?
Yeah, and as I say, generally speaking, because of the topography of Italy, as we see Rogoberto Urán and Fabio Aru there, our first glimpse of him in the centre of your screen. The big Italian hope, of course, for this race is the way that Italy is made up, the way the towns and the cities are, and generally, you stay in towns, so you'll have just 1 or 2 teams staying at hotels, which are generally family run, and so you get this authentic atmosphere that is genuine. And then of course there's the tifosi on the climbs of the Gavia, and it's just monumentally historic and beautiful. And of course, given its position on the calendar in May, there's the weather conditions as well. So I remember racing in the valleys in short sleeves and 75, 80 degrees, and then an hour later you go over the Passo di Gavia in the sleet and in the snow and freezing to death. It's a race of contrast, and that's what makes it so special.
Packing for the Giro d'Italia is probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do in cycling. It's a nightmare trying to fit everything into one suitcase. You've got to take clothes for all seasons.
Yeah, it is an amazing race. It's a beautiful race, and this year again, we have our out-and-out favourites, but I think the favourites are going to have to come out to play, like we see sometimes in the Tour. Although I think the Tour de France and Prudhomme and co should be praised for the parcours of the Tour de France last year. It's a mirrored this Giro a little bit. There's lots of semi-mountainous stages that aren't too long in distance but promote aggressive racing, opens up the race. Although the GC rods have to be there, but other riders come into the mix and make it far more unpredictable. So I thought the Tour de France last year was the most unformulaic it had been. When it was launched, people thought, where's Alpe d'Huez, where's all the classic climbs? But it worked. You look a few years back at the Vuelta, and they changed, obviously the calendar changed for the Vuelta, but they made the stages shorter there, although it's still the hilliest race, with the shortening of the stages and the slightly less ferocious parcours, it opened up the race. But that's what the Giro's always been like. It's always been extremely difficult, but it's the unpredictability that gives it its flavour.
25 kilometres to go on the Giro today. Stage 2, 1 minute and 32 for a breakaway of Marco Fraporti, the Italian, for Androni Sidamek. Giacomo Bellato of Nippo Vini Fantini, another Italian rider. Elget Zupa is the Albanian rider, the only Albanian rider in the race racing for Southeast, who are already down to 8 men after the retirement of Ramon Carretero, the Panama rider today. Bert-Jan Lindemann, who's going to be the king of the mountains, the Dutch rider. He's in the yellow jersey right at the top right of your screen if you look at it now. He rides for Lotto NL Jumbo. And Łukasz Ovsian, third in that caption on the top right, in the orange jersey for CCC. That break's going to come to an end. It's going to be somebody from this peloton who's going to win the stage today. We expect it to be a sprint, and we're just starting to see teams get into their little blocks of colours. Oh, and perhaps not in time. Problems for Heinrich Hausler. Heinrich Hausler is down. He's hurt, trying to get to his feet, and the Australian champion is not looking good. In fact, it's Yam Cycling who looked to have had a collective nightmare. There's also a rider down as well from Orica Green Edge. We wait to see who that is. It looks like it could well be Peter Veining, but I'm not too sure. Heinrich Hausler, though, he's one of the unluckiest riders in cycling with crashes and injuries. Rider from Astana down as well. That Astana rider looks to be Tano Kanga. He's on the right-hand side in the light blue.
Cobrelli also from Bardiani, so 5 or 6 riders here.
Tiziano Dall'Antonio, the man who was involved in the 1-2-3 when Andre Greipel won for the last time.
Atapuma is also down.
Matteo Pelucchi as well, so both sprinters for Yam Cycling, and I think it's fairly safe to say that it's going to be a bit of a nightmare for Yam Cycling today. Matteo Pelucchi and Heinrich Hausler, both of their sprinters involved in this crash. An absolute nightmare for them. Tano Kanga, yes, he's important. There is Tiziano Dall'Antonio, is the man standing up there wearing 14, the Androni rider. And it's really interesting to see now what happens for Yam Cycling. Here is how the crash happened, man.
It's difficult to say exactly what happened, but I would imagine it's just a touch of wheels. Happened sort of midway, well, toward the back, midway through the peloton, but the ripple effect was riders on the right-hand side of the road went. A few riders have been blocked there, managed to get round without falling, but what a disaster for Yam Cycling. 2 of their favoured sprinters. It also looks like Sylvain Chavanel is down in the sprint, as is down in the crash as well.
Yeah, Chavanel is there. Chava, you can see his name on the back. Sarah Montin's with him, waiting to escort him back to the peloton. Yeah, there's a real good chance that they're going to get back on towards the end, but nothing else. The sprinters certainly out of the game now.
Yeah, it's a big shame for Yam Cycling, and that's one of the drawbacks. If you can, I mean, it's important that teams ride together to look after their team leaders or designated protected riders for the stage. But when there's a crash, what you get is several riders from one team taken out in one go. So it's the way you have to ride, but the unfortunate flip side is that you lose 3 or 4 riders.
City of Genoa, back in a minute with the finale. In Genoa, heading very, very close to the football ground here, Marassi Stadium. Around 20 kilometres to go, 50 seconds now for the breakaway. It's gone below a minute.
That's our first view of that finishing straight. That little left turn just after the Flamme Rouge, so that straight makes it about 850, 900 metres. And there's the incline. That's a pretty good view there. It's good that the riders, well, it's an opportunity for the riders to really make an assessment and a call. For many teams, it'll be the first time they've seen this finish, of course. But makes such a difference. And then you'll see teams able to execute a plan on the roads, communicate with each other to see exactly which way they're going to take this sprint. And I'd suggest that they're going to have to leave it a little bit late, given that incline.
Beautiful huge arch that they're going to go under here.
Just by the fact you saw the riders getting out of the saddle there just indicates there is a reasonably significant gradient.
First passage of the finish line and the start of 2 laps of a 9.5-kilometre circuit in Genoa. 5-man breakaway still out there. 47 seconds is all they have. Southeast involved. CCC Sprandi Polkovica, Androni Sidamek, as well as Lotto NL Jumbo and Nippo Vini Fantini. 2 laps to go, as you can see. And they are the 5 riders about to come across the line for the first time. And what a reception, listen to that. Absolutely wonderful. So much pink on the side of the roads, loud voices screaming. It's been a beautiful sunny day in Genoa. The weekend, as all those motorbikes and cars are now going to have to battle to get by, because coming on from behind the peloton, they've had a few crashes. You've seen Pelucchi and Hausler in trouble down on the ground, and they're going to struggle to get back in, half of the AM squad, before we get to the sprint here. Not sure they're going to contest it at all. It's all about saving the damage and thinking ahead to another day.
Indeed. Well, Darwin Atapuma was also caught in that crash, sadly, for BMC. He's had a tumultuous couple of days, has the Colombian, is losing his mother, unfortunately, but still is in this race. He wants to finish this race. To respect the memory of his mother. It's what she wanted him to do. So hopefully we know that he's back on the riding, which is good to see.
And he's also the main GC hope of BMC as well.
Well, alongside Damiano Caruso is the big hope, of course. Rode pretty well in this race in the World Tour as well. So I think him and Atapuma, but to be fair, looking at the speed and looking at the delay there, it's going to be very difficult for Atapuma to get back on, although he was one of the first to get back on his feet. But it's definitely, I would imagine it's game over for the 3YAM cycling team.
There is that fleet of motorbikes and cars being pulled out of the gap by the race commissars now. Suggests it's going around the 30-second mark and southwards. A little look behind from Marco Frapporti. You get the idea and impression by looking at these guys now that there's not too much commitment at the moment. They've had enough today.
Definitely. Well, they've made the first passage. Maglia Azzurra is now going to be on the shoulders of Bert Jan Lindemann. He's going to be very, very pleased, and no doubt his Lotto Jumbo teammates are going to be absolutely delighted. But they've got Moreno Hofland among their number, and I can almost guarantee you'll see him in the mix. But given that slope, I mean, I'm thinking this is going to suit more of the puncher. I wouldn't say it's significant gradient, but it's significant enough to make a slight difference to the effort. And lots of the riders on the front of the bunch, they were riding out of the saddle, and that suggests, and just the speed that the breakaway were going over the line, although they know, of course, their days are numbered. And the speeds are going to be different on the next couple of laps. That could suit the likes of Philippe Gilbert. So I'm going to put now my kind of colours to the mast and make a bit of a prediction. I think it might suit Gilbert.
Oh, we've had another crash. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. And it's problems this time for Movistar. Movistar with Dayer Quintana. Dayer Quintana. That's Nairo Quintana, the current champion's brother, is down for Movistar. Another crash. And it's before we even get to the section where we expected that could happen. It's worrying already. Dayer Quintana safely back. He's being checked out by the doctor. The mechanics in the meantime making sure that he's got the bike ready. He's
come down really quite hard on his left-hand side there. Absolutely shredded his jersey there. A bit of a massive shame. Fortunately, he's the only rider that seems to have come down. We've not seen any other riders at all. He is back on his feet. They're preparing him a new bike. But no, a big shame for the young Colombian.
Dayer Quintana for Movistar, a Movistar team that doesn't have a GC aspiration this year. They're here to try and win stages, so there's no panic in terms of peddling anybody back straight away. But Dayer Quintana, nevertheless, a bit of a worry there, going and injuring his shoulder. So where does this circuit go then? 9.5 kilometres, it stays in the city. It goes through Piazza Ferrari with a very short section of paving stones, heads down to Piazza Brignole, and then the road slowly rises up to Piazza Verdi. It's here where we get a 1 kilometre section of 4% of a gradient as Dayer Quintana's back on his bike. We come back down towards the seafront, and then we have the finish that we just saw then, that 90-degree and almost full final kilometre straight up the road, and the gradient looking more pronounced on those pictures than it certainly does on the profile.
It definitely does. We've got a really good camera angle, didn't we? And then we followed the breakaway through, and then we saw the finish for the first time, about 900 metres straight, and it kicks up, particularly in the last 600 metres. It's not a savage climb at all, but it's significant enough to completely... and there's another one of these short rides on the circuit. We may see a few attacks on this finishing circuit. You know, Tinkoff Saxo have gone to the front. This is where I think young Quintana came to grief. And there it is, just on your left-hand side. I don't know what happened there. Didn't see... He was actually quite removed from any other rides. It could be the change in road surface. Perhaps there was a little divot there. sometimes when you've got new tarmac that's been laid, there can be a ripple effect, and if you haven't got your hands overly gripped on the handlebars, you're just resting on the hoods, it can be enough just to for you to lose control, especially when you don't expect it. If you're sat on the wheel of somebody, quite often the riders will shout out or point to the floor, and if that doesn't happen, it can leave you open to perhaps falling off, and that looks like the fate that befell Dare Quintana with the breakaway. Still out in front, still 46 seconds, but this is another one of these short rises that punctuate this finish.
This is that kilometre section at 4%. Front of the race still with 5 men for the minute, 42 seconds. A nervous look behind from Bellato. Perhaps it's one of those looks behind is, come on, can you catch us now? I want this to be over. He's had a tiring day as Giacomo Bellato. Almost
waiting, almost wishing that he was caught, but that's Chris Jensen on the front there for Tinkoff Saxo. Again, they haven't got a sprinter. It's worth pointing out that clearly they want to stamp their authority on the race and just basically keep the tempo high, keep Alberto Contador out of trouble. You can just see him in the centre of your screen, sat about 6th in line. Ivan Rovny on the wheel of the Danish-Irish rider.
Funny, Astana very, very close to the front as well, hot on the heels there of Alberto Contador. You can see Sylvester Schmidt, well, for CCC Sprandi Polkovica, as that's just a little example of the pros looking out for each other and just signalling that this was quite a sharp turn, something to watch out for.
Exactly, you'll see that. I mean, you'll see riders point out holes in the road, you'll see riders pointing out road furniture. There'll be a sharp flick of the hand or the arm on the right or left if there's a parked car or anything like that. And then if it's a sharp right or left-hand turn, they'll also indicate it and then that signal will then be passed back through the peloton, and so people can brake in good time. And you'll also, we can't really hear it here, but there'll also be shouts of left or right or slow down in various different languages. So the peloton has its own kind of language, but generally sign language is the one that works the best, but that's really good to see.
$15 kilometres to go on day 2 of the most beautiful race of the year. Giro d'Italia 2015 is in Genoa today. We've been bathed in sunshine all day long. We've had the odd bit of a nervous crash towards the end today. A couple of teams already, we suspect, with their sprinters out of the game today, and that final game is about to begin. 15 kilometres to go. There's the 5 kilometre mark. Don't get too confused because we've got 2 laps of just under 10 kilometres today, and we're on the first of those 2. Tinkoff Saxo and Astana at the front at the minute. The sprinters teams just sitting back for the moment and letting the general classification teams, who are after looking at just protecting their lead. Oh, and that's good to see. Heinrich Hausler back towards the end, and in the meantime, it's fun and games at the front. Anybody who wants to keep this break going is trying to do so, and it's Giacomo Bellato who puts in a bit of an attack. Yeah, the little Italian, perhaps disappointed that he missed out on wearing the blue jersey for the King of the Mountains, trying to go it alone. But the other Italian in the breakaway, Frapporti, straight on his wheel again, bringing his back, followed by Zupa, the Albanian riding on the south. Sorry, it's not Zupa at all, it's Ozvan, the Polish rider. Now the Polish rider left on the attack to the left-hand side. Ovzjan has gone. Łukasz Ovzjan in the orange. She's the Polish rider. He's being chased down now by Jupa from southeast. Frapporti has been left behind, as has Bellato, as has the first King of the Mountains of this Giro, Bert-Jan Lindemann. Right at the back here, one of the Lamper riders, just making sure he's in the right position. Number 91, that is Diego Lissi, a couple of times stage winner last year before his positive test. It's quite possible the riders are battling out. There is a Most Aggressive Rider Award sponsored by Pinarello. There's actually an award for the most aggressive rider, but it's basically how far in front, to how many kilometres you have out in the breakaway, or la fuga as they call it in Italian. Pinarello. It was a really good fight for that last year. In fact, he went right down to the final couple of days with riders trying to get out there. Tinkoff Saxo en masse at the front, 13.1 kilometres to go. Back by the seaside again, there's that sort of false flat little rise alongside the Mediterranean Sea. This will suit the sprinters teams. Tinkoff Saxo just wanting to keep Alberto Contador out of trouble. You can see how nervous the bunch is. As you can see, a club rider actually trying to get in the mix there. I'd imagine that's a flat-out sprint for that rider on the right-hand side. Please don't get confused. That's not a participant in the Giro d'Italia. It's just a rather overzealous fan, perhaps. He's riding in a kit that resembles one of those you were talking about earlier on, when jerseys were jerseys and they were, let's say, a little more loose-fitting. The club fit, we like to call it these days. Number 4 at the back there in the Azure Desert jersey was Axel Domont, one of the young riders for the French team. Was already 2 minutes and 46 down on the overall. This is Elbert Zuper at the front. He has Łukasz Ovzian for company. Łukasz Ovzian riding for CCC Sprande Polkowice. Already a win on the World Tour this year for the team. Maciej Paterski pulling it off. There's Alberto Contador. Serious business for him. Every stage he knows it can go wrong, and it's gone wrong again here. More crashes on the Giro, right towards the front of the group this time. Another BMC rider down, and a rider down for Katusha. The rider down for Katusha is Maxim Belkov, who is the points jersey winner and the king of the mountains in the Tour de Romandie.
Very, very nervous race. That's
and
why
Hausler down once again. Sorry, Matt, but Hausler is down once more. A lot of riders affected this time. We said he's probably the most unlucky rider in cycling at the minute with crashes, the last few years anyway. Heinrich Hausler, the Australian champion, once again involved. We wait for the replay. He
did so well to get back on as well. To be honest, I'd written him off, but to get back on and then to come down in a crash is absolutely cruel. We can see now Lotto Enel Jumbo going to the front.
And we've got splits here already. Splits because of this crash, and the racing's really on now. 11.5 kilometres to go. You can't just let the breakaway go, and the race is on. There's no waiting up here at the minute.
There's no waiting up at all, and that's why we're seeing Tinkoff Saxo at the front, perhaps anticipating it's going to be a nervous finale. We've seen several crashes already. That was the most significant. But still Tinkoff on the front, got the whole team there. Aston there.
And this is why you ride at the front, isn't it?
This is exactly why you ride at the front. It's generally speaking, if you ride at the front, stay out of trouble. Crashes do happen at the front, but generally happen midway through the peloton where people are fighting for places, and that's what we've seen happen here. Tinkoff Saxo keeping Alberto Contador well out of trouble at the moment.
On the left-hand side at the bottom, you have Richie Porte and Sky. First weeks in Grand Tours are always nerves. We thought there'd be a little less nervousness with the time gaps today that have already been established. However, it's all about staying safe, and now you know exactly why the general classification riders were at the front. We've got that series of turns here. The first big 90-degree left turn. We've got another right turn, another quick left, and it's the final 800 metres or so, which are completely straight here. Once again, across the finish line we will go, and after that, it's all about trying to sort out, if we can get any sort of sorting out what's happened behind, who is there for a probable sprint.
There's still Chris Juliensen on the front for Tinkoff Saxo, setting a really high tempo now. Have increased the speed from the last lap. There's Tosato also there. Alberto Contador sat about 7th wheel, and here's the splits, real significant. Mikel Nieve at the back of that little group, but look at the gap there.
Interesting as well, where is the pink jersey? We can see on the left-hand side, Orica Greenedge, we suspect they're in the bunch. Pink jersey in the bunch after the crashes. Orica Greenedge still there or thereabouts as well, but it's a group that has lost riders, several groups on the road. We've had big crashes as we come into the last lap. It's not unusual in the first week of a Grand Tour. It's certainly not unusual on the Italian roads. We have 10 kilometres to go, one lap of this circuit of Genoa to go. Giro d'Italia Stage 2 already provided entertainment, not all of it in the manner that we wanted today, but there could be much more to come. 10 Ks to go. We go through Piazza Ferrari and its pink fountain. Who's been left behind? First chance to have a look. We can see Ryder Hayestal already losing time yesterday in the team time trial. BMC with a lot of riders behind. Lampre with almost their entire team caught up at that as well. Sylvain Chavanel once again caught in the crash. And we have more riders desperate to try and get back on here. Domenico Pozzovivo already losing a lot of time on the team time trial. And this could be a nightmare Giro d'Italia start for him.
You could just see Pozzovivo 5th wheel there, the Italian. Lots of the Agi Desire riders who missed out in the, who were caught behind are now dropping back to help up. They said they've already lost time, but that's not the place to be. And this is going to be desperate times now. Very difficult for this group to get back on. They've got to get back to Group 1, and then they've got to get back to the front.
Well, we've been talking about the 4 aces. Aru, Uran, Porte, Contador. They're all in this group, it seems. They're all safe. But outside of those 4, you had to pick another contender. Most people would say Domenico Pozzovivo for a mountainous Giro d'Italia. It's his race. He's on form. He's won twice already this season. First wins for almost 3 years. But the Giro could be lost after 2 days here.
It certainly could. It's absolutely in tatters at the back. Still a significant group. But this is the thing. I talked about, you know, the nervous first stage of a Grand Tour. It always happens, whatever it is. And these riders have been racing against each other all year. They're remarkably experienced, but there is something quite unique about the first road stage of any Grand Tour. I've experienced it myself. You know the riders around you, but there's something odd. It takes a while to get into the rhythm. And Alberto Contador and Tinkoff Saxo, they're fully aware of that. Team Sky also very, very near the front. There's no need for them to make the pacemaking, but this is all about making sure Alberto Contador is out of trouble, because he's in very, very good form. Slightly mysterious. He's been off the scene training for the last 40 days, but we know he's riding particularly well. It's all about keeping your riders out of trouble. But yeah, a really unique feel to generally the first road stage of any Grand Tour, and this stage here to Genoa, no exception at all.
Greipel, Viviani, Nizzolo, Matthews, Lovato, Pelucchi, Modolo, Hofland, Bonen, Meersman, all the names that were involved at the start of the day. A few of those have already dropped by the wayside. They have been cut off. Who is still there? We actually saw quite a few of the Ethics quick-step riders push back as well, looking for Urano. I do think is still in there. One man who is certainly perfectly placed at the minute is Andrei Greipel, as is Elia Viviani, as is Alessandro Petacchi towards the front. Now that would be a turn up for the books.
It looks like it is. Petacchi is definitely. We know that Simon Gerrans is there. You never know, Simon. This sort of sprint could suit Simon Gerrans. He does like a bit of an uphill finish.
Well, you'd have to say that Matthews is the favourite, but again, we haven't seen an image of the whole team there at one. We would say that with the way that they're riding and looking after Gerrans, and the way there's a few jerseys there, there's a high probability that Michael Matthews is in this bunch. We'd love to get a little bit of a closer look.
You can just see Andrei Greipel. Remember, he's not in the same kit as his Lotto Soudal teammates. He's in the white jersey with the red, yellow and black bands of German national road champion. Look out for him in the middle of your screen. And it's this Manuel Boaro of Tinkoff Saxo still at the front. They haven't missed a beat. Ivan Basso is on his wheel. When will we see the sprinters teams come to the front? But of course, it's so fragmented. There's no, the only team in number seem to be Tinkoff Saxo at the moment. Even Team Sky only have about 3 or 4 riders in the mix. I can see Bernie Eisel there. I can see Elia Viviani. But look at the scramble to get back in contention.
It's good to see that most of those involved do seem like they're going to get back onto the peloton at least, and they're not going to lose big time. There still could be and will be, I'm pretty sure, 1 or 2 casualties at the end, and we're going to have to wait until the final full results just to pick it through with a fine-tooth comb to see exactly who has lost a bit of time. Tinkoff Saxo doing a great job. This was almost a time trial back. They wanted the car up the road and out the way to make sure that they could get Domenico Pozzovivo in the right place.
Definitely, that's going to be a desperate chase. You could see one of the ʻdʒiːro riders dropping back, who originally they were on the radio. You could see Pozzovivo actually on his radio calling for help. They're going to have to try and team time trial back. Several of the groups have now got back onto the peloton. It is swelling in size. The riders at the back, of course, won't be able to contest the finish. They just want to get back in so they don't lose too much time. Look at the Sky train on the left-hand side. Bernie Eisel there. You can still see Andrei Greipel in the middle of your screen. And the entire Tinkoff Saxo squad still there.
And I've just seen Michael Matthews. He's in the white young riders jersey at the back of that group for Orica Greener. So Michael Matthews is a part to play. Lamprimerida riding on the left-hand side suggests that Sacha Modolo is involved, or at least one of their other sprinters. Viviani, we're going to have to wait and see what happens. He's right next to Greipel at the minute.
I can see
Philippe BMC riders as well. Philippe Gilbert, one of them.
It looks like Philippe Gilbert on his wheel. It looks like the young Rick Zabel.
Side as well, whose father Eric raced against Alessandro Petacchi, never won a Giro d'Italia stage though, does Eric.
But won Milan San Remo 4 or 5 times.
So it's the right region for him in Liguria. 5.5 k's to go. Sky, Astana, Tinkoff Saxo all towards the front. And these are those who are just getting on the back towards the end. Fast and furious in the final 5.5 kilometres of this Giro d'Italia second stage. Tinkoff Saxo, Sky and Astana, as you'd expect. Ethics Quick-Step with a few bodies caught behind, still looking to get that shot of Rigoberto Urán, but we expect that he is there. A couple of Ethics Quick-Step jerseys just on the heels of those from Astana. You expect and think that if it is in fact Rigoberto Urán who's one of those who's out the back, the whole team goes to look for him. You'd certainly hope so, for his hopes anyway. Look at this though from ʻdʒiːro. Putting in a great turn in. They've still got Tosato to use up as well.
Yeah, they're going very hard in front. Astana now coming up the left-hand side.
Oh dear, oh dear.
There really are numerous casualties today. That looks like a pretty nasty injury. Looks like it's hurt his face there. Couldn't quite recognise which rider that was from Ethics, but very nasty indeed. Still Tinkoff Saxo at the front. There's Tosato in second wheel, Ivan Basso in third. Emanuele Boaro has had a win himself this year.
Boaro, a time trialist by strict profession, but he's also an excellent rouleur as well.
Took out the stage, thinking of Circuit de la Sarthe, didn't he, earlier this year? Remarkably attacking rider.
Peter Seri is the man who we saw on our screen a minute ago. He is looking in a pretty bad way.
This is a quite unique situation we're seeing here at the finish in Genoa. None of the sprinters' teams, it's the team of the outright favourite who don't have a sprinter who is setting the tempo at the front. You don't often see this at all.
Well, bonus seconds in the top 10.
10, 6 and 4 on offer.
And I just heard that Peter Seri's climbed off his bike. Not surprising.
He looked like he was in quite a bad way. Looks like most of these riders wear sunglasses. I think Peter Seri definitely wears glow. Looks like he's hit his head. He had a cut to the right of his eye. I hope he's okay. Very unfortunate, but many casualties. And now it's Tosato on the front, Ivan Basso on his wheel. Alberto Contador sat on the wheel of Basso, his lieutenant. What a finish this is going to be. Sky moving up the outside as well.
3 kilometres to go now as we come towards the finish of stage 2 of this Giro d'Italia 2015. We've had crashes, we've had all sorts of the things that we don't like to see on the Giro. We've been pleasantly looking at the coastline this afternoon, but it has exploded into life. Who is going to take the stage here, though? That is the question. We're inside 3Ks to go. They've already gone past the banner. Andre Greipel, the best position of the sprinters as it looks at the minute. Elia Viviani, though, also up there as Richie Porte is attempted to be kept safe. Lampre with riders there as well. Who's left for Ethics Quick-Step? Is it going to be a job for Meersman? Is it going to be a job also, perhaps even, for Tom Bonen? We shall see.
It could be. It looks like, well, that's definitely Bernie Eisel on the front. It looks like he's got Puccio on his wheel, and just behind is Elia Viviani. So Sky are working for him. No other Sky riders in the mix at the head of affairs.
And here comes
Orica
Nizzolo
moving up the outside, and Nizzolo as well.
Here comes Nizzolo. Tom Bonen there as well. Rigoberto Urán fairly close to the Spanish champion. Yonis Aguirre trying to stay close to the front too. 2.3 Ks to go as Katusha come to the front today, riding, of course,
Paolini.
for Porsev. Paolini there, the man to guide them into the front, and he seems to hide and hide, stay out of trouble all day long, and he appears always at just the right time, now inside the last 2 Ks.
So one of the Orica Green Edge riders came to Gruffet. Don't know what happened on the corner there, but Paolini, the way he reads a race, one of the master tacticians of the peloton. But now Lampre Merida in the pink and blue on the left-hand side, the flick of the elbow, moving up their sprint.